Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council work session. Today is February 16, 2021. My name is Wanda R.D. Williams. I'm the chair, and all city council are members. I'm starting this meeting, calling it to order at 5:33 p.m. Mr. Petrosky, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madsen.
Here.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here. Thank you very much, Mr. Petrosky. We now will move on to committee business. We will begin the work session with Building and Housing Committee. Ms. Bowers, I will turn the meeting over to you at the present time.
Thank you, President Williams. Good evening, everyone. The Building and Housing Committee will discuss three bills this evening, Bill 16 of 2020, Bill 18 of 2020, and Bill 19 of 2020, all of which are a part of a four-bill legislative package related to affordable housing within the city of Harrisburg. As you'll remember, we discussed Bill 16 of 2020. That is the primary bill within the package. It establishes the affordable housing program. So we just wanted to begin there again tonight. Mr. Petrosky, if you could please read Bill 16 of 2020 into the record.
Sure. Bill 16 of 2020 is an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg, adding thereto Title 12, entitled Affordable Housing, establishing incentives for the development of affordable dwelling units through the use of affordable housing development certifications and agreements, authorizing the promulgation of rules and regulations to establish and maintain affordable housing programs, and imposing fines and penalties for willful noncompliance with program requirements and agreements.
Thank you. So during our last discussion of Bill 16, council members posed questions relative to the following issue areas: enforcement, a complaint procedure, and defining affordable housing. Our deputy city solicitor, Ms. Tiffany Baldock, clarified that the 20% of units of affordable housing that is outlined in the bill is not final. There is no minimum scale. Finally, we received public commentary regarding the same 20% of units of affordable housing, the addition of incentives for our residents, and a transition process from our residents being renters to becoming homeowners. So those are some of the comments we received. I will ask Ms. Nona Watson if she has any additional feedback on behalf of the administration.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Councilwoman Bowers. I'm still very excited about this affordable housing program. I think one of the things that I just wanted to mention is we've been getting a lot of feedback ourselves about the bills before you. And we just wanted everyone to know, we want the public to know that there are so many different aspects to an affordable housing program, and we are building on that program. So right now, our focus is on the supply side, which we're dealing with incentivizing development. So I just wanted to mention that so that everyone could keep that in mind, but we intend to continue to build, as you already know, Councilmember Bowers. I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. At this time, I'll open it up to my colleagues for any remaining questions that you may have regarding Bill 16. I will begin with Councilwoman Green. Do you have any questions regarding Bill 16?
At this time, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Majors, any additional questions?
Sorry, may have to come back to me. I having some setup issues.
Okay, I'll come back. Thank you. Councilman Madsen, any additional questions on Bill 16?
Yeah, as I recall, there was a little bit of a back and forth over making the qualifications for the income and whether or not, we were kind of essentially using HUD data, and if there wasn't a better metric to use that made it more specific to Harrisburg, because how HUD does it is usually regional data, which could skew it slightly. Is there any clarification on that, or is HUD effectively just basically what we have to defer to because we have no other accurate way of determining the income requirements?
Councilmember Madsen, I'm sorry. I'd really like to get back to you on that. I want to make sure we do due diligence in our research and provide the right information to the city council.
Yeah, I mean, or not between me and you, but from the research I've done, often you have to kind of defer to HUD because that's sort of the universal metric understood. I understand the concerns with it, but I don't know of an alternative resource that's as universally recognized as HUD.
Yes.
So I guess that would be my only perspective there. And then I know the enforcement piece came up and we had some discussion there. But I guess any clarification on the enforcement, if we did incur a bad actor, the process, what would occur, either get them in compliance or enforce some sort of penalty or fee if they were to not be in compliance.
I know, is Tiffany on as well? I know when we were on the last time, the mayor said that one of the things we would use was the certificate of occupancy. That was one of the things. And I haven't actually had another conversation with him as of yet.
Yes,
Okay.
and Nona, I am on. This is Tiffany.
Oh, hi, Tiffany.
Hi. And yes, the certificate of occupancy was going to be one of the major hammers that the city has to enforce the affordable housing program. And largely it would be codes when the certificate of occupancy, when it's finally ready to be issued, they can either withhold issuing it if the program is not, if the developer is not in compliance with the program. And then moving forward, once the developer is already in the program, there is a yearly certification where they have to submit their certification along with their rental registration application. And that would be a yearly check to see that the developer is still in compliance. And if they weren't in compliance, then we could revoke their certificate of occupancy.
Okay, I guess I'd be curious to hear from my colleagues if they felt that that was a sufficient enforcement mechanism. But other than that, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Daniels, do you have any additional questions on Bill 16?
I don't have additional questions. I just wanted to hear what the answers were to the questions that I asked last week.
Understood, thank you. Vice President Allen, any questions?
So my questions are a little bit more procedural, particularly when it comes to amendments, because I kind of dovetailing on Dave's question to Nona about the impact of HUD on from an oversight standpoint. And then when it comes to amendments, if we're looking to take this up for a vote anytime in the near future, even as early as next week, do you have a sense for when you want to see amendments and how we're going to run those amendments through kind of legal, just to get the legal opinion on them, make sure we're not running afoul of anything that could be impacted, whether it be HUD or otherwise?
Sure, thank you for that procedural question. So I'm expecting up to this point that this bill of the four may have the most amendments. It is my hope to reconvene the Affordable Housing Task Force to discuss the amendment process and include the solicitor's office within the meeting to make sure that they have enough time to draft in a reasonable manner. I do not expect a vote to occur next week, But I should have an idea before the end of this week, hopefully, when we can meet to discuss next steps.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. That's all I have.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. President Williams, do you have any questions on Bill 16?
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Tiffany, give me a clarification. Is this going to be a certificate of qualification or is this going to be a certificate of occupancy? Which one?
So when a developer wants to become enrolled in the affordable housing program, they have to submit information to NONA, which includes a developer's agreement with the city. And once they meet, once they meet the qualifications as far as providing the requisite number of affordable housing units, then they get a certificate of qualification to be enrolled in the program.
Okay.
The certificate of occupancy comes out of codes, and that's issued when a developer has completed their project and they are ready for tenants to actually move in to the dwelling units. Codes issues that certificate of occupancy, which notes that, development has been done to all the applicable building codes and other statutes. So there's two. There's both. There's a certificate of qualification that's specifically for the affordable housing program. And then codes does a certificate of occupancy that is towards the building component.
Okay. Understandable. Now, will there be a fee assessed for the certificate of qualification?
We have not included a fee at this point.
And why not?
It is not something that was discussed. I think the thought was that if someone is providing affordable housing, that we did not want to have any more cost associated with that particular development.
Okay. Now, you indicated that the enforcement for developers on affordable housing would come out of codes. Do we have the individuals in codes who will be qualified to make that assessment?
Well, what it would be is it would be in conjunction with NONA and codes. Okay. So yearly, NONA would be reviewing the information that's submitted to codes for the yearly, it's their yearly compliance information. NONA would be reviewing that information, and if that information indicated that the developer was no longer in compliance, she would alert codes, and codes would then revoke the certificate of occupancy. So we have multiple departments working together.
Okay. So NONA will be the responsible individual for the denial letter to the individual developer if they do not qualify or they do not abide by our codes or our laws?
We have not gotten to that particular point as far as who would actually be alerting the developer and what that letter would look like.
Okay. I think, that's something that we should probably look at too as we go and continue to discuss this piece of legislation. Now, my next question is, who will monitor the applicants who are required to file annual registrations for the residential rental unit?
So those applications, the residential rental units, come in yearly, and I'm not sure if they go directly to codes, but what we envision is the compliance piece for affordable housing would be filed at the same time.
So we should also include that so we know who to respond to in case applicants, the residents, would ask us a lot of questions regarding that piece.
I will note that and follow up with the administration.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. I just had one other comment that I wanted to share relative to Bill 16 in addressing the 20% of affordable housing that's outlined in the bill. I received a phone call from a developer last week following our meeting, and they shared with me that for their particular project, I think their range was, or their percentage was 33% without the possibility of subsidizing anything. So it's my thought that within this amendment, you will see a range that may begin at 30%. Not sure what a comfortable ending range would be realistic for the developers, but I just wanted to note that I think a range would be helpful depending on the number of units that the developer is suggesting in their project. Councilman Majors, just wanted to circle back with you before we move on to Bill 18.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of that, I guess in terms of that range, Councilwoman Bowers, are you looking for like additional incentives if they go above, or is it just a range of what would be considered as a part of the affordable housing piece?
I was just thinking of what would be considered as a part of the program, but we can certainly discuss. I don't know what the height of the range would be, so I don't want to make that commitment that yes, we should add additional incentives. So I'd like to look at a realistic range beginning possibly at the 30%, since that seems to be around what some potential developments are using that range comfortably. So yeah, I don't want to make that level of commitment. I'd rather stick with just the range for the program at this time.
Okay, thank you. And you know, and in reading the bill, I don't know if this is for Nona or for Tiffany. So if I'm a developer and I want to put in a request to for the certificate of qualification, is there a specific you know, deadline or turnaround time for us to review that information and provide them with the certification, or is it just prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued?
At this point, we have not set specific timeframes, but to the point, I do think that, you know, once the information is submitted, you know, it should be reviewed in a timely manner. I don't think it necessarily needs to be all submitted prior to development. You know, you could get partially into your project and then decide you want to do affordable housing, and you know, developers shouldn't be barred from then doing something within the program. So I think that that goes to sort of some of the ministerial duties that are going to have to be thought about and put in place.
Okay, thank you. And then, so, and going through, so is acceptance going to be on a rolling basis or an annual basis? Since I know I'm looking at the annual certification, they would have to have it in by December 31st. So each it'd be effective for 1 year, and then failure to file before January 1 of any calendar year should result in the revocation of a certification, the certificate of qualification. So are we looking at a rolling program, or just this, if you don't get it in by January 1, you wouldn't be eligible for that year?
So no, I would see that the initial certificate of qualification would be on a rolling basis, as you know, developers come in throughout the year, and some of their projects may, you know, they start their paperwork perhaps in November, but they don't actually get in front of the Planning Commission or in front of other boards until say February. So yes, the initial qualification would be on a rolling basis, and then annually thereafter.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I think I'm encouraged by Council Person Bowers' goal to try and push the affordable housing piece up. You know, we want to really try to incentivize this. So look forward to, I guess, working through the amendment process and hearing more from the task force as they continue their work.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to table Bill 16 again until we sort out the amendment process. We'll move forward with Bill 18 of 2020. Mr. Petrosky, if you could please read that into the record.
Yes, Bill 18 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Part 1 of Title 9, Streets and Sidewalks, and adding thereto Chapter 9-117, entitled Street Vacations, and providing standards, therefore requiring the submission of proposed land development plans or lot consolidations in conjunction with a petition to vacate a street, incorporating a public good proposal requirement for each petition, and in furtherance of the development of affordable housing, declaring the development of affordable housing associated with an application to vacate a street to be a qualifying public good.
Thank you. I'm not sure who from the administration. I know we have quite a few people on the line. I don't know if Ms. Baldock, if you'd like to begin, or if, okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Bowers, thank you. Even though I'm not part of the administration, as I serve both the administration and city council, treasurer, I will talk about Bill 18 of 2020. So Bill 18 lays out the process for street vacations. Street vacations are governed under the third-class city code, but the city has never incorporated any of the component pieces into the city code. So when developers come in, or even if it's a private property owner that wants to vacate a street, they're often left with little guidance of what exactly is required. As part of the third class city code dictates that city council, in order to vacate a street, must find that there is a qualifying public good associated with the street vacation. So what we've done is we've set up the process and some of the criteria in the city code. As part of the city code, we incorporate the third class city information, which is that there must be a petition that's presented to city council. The petition must be signed by a majority of the owners of the abutting property. It must be verified by an affidavit. And then, so that's part of the third class city code that we're now incorporating. And then we outline some minimum standards that an applicant must submit to the city. And a lot of these things they're already submitting, but it's not detailed anywhere. So some of the things that we would be looking for is, site information. What is the street that you're trying to vacate? We need a survey of the area along with the legal description. We also want to see what the entire project is going to look like. So we would like for developers and applicants to come in with a preliminary land development plan in conjunction with their street vacation, or at least some kind of sketch plan. So city council knows the purpose for the street vacation and has an idea of what development is going to occur in the future. How this ties into affordable housing is that we have laid out specific items that would automatically be considered a qualifying public good. And one of those is affordable housing. So if you're doing affordable housing, you've already met the criteria of providing a public good. It doesn't automatically get you a street vacation, but it checks one of the boxes. And it's on the developer to provide a proposal about how their project is going to provide a public good. And if that's affordable housing, they would give you a proposal, what they're proposing to do with their affordable housing project. And then there's other items that would meet that test as well. And they are going to be outlined. They start at line 102. And that could be, number one is affordable housing. Then we have publicly accessible plaza, open spaces, more green space. You can do streetscape enhancements. That would be, wider sidewalks, street trees, landscaping, more lighting. You could provide pedestrian trails, more bicycle-friendly areas, if you're doing preservation of any landmark building, if you're improving traffic safety in the area. And one of the other things would be managing stormwater. These public good items were put in place with consultation from the planning department and the city engineer. Now, this list is not exhaustive. Obviously, there's other things that could be, declared a public good, but these were some of the main items that both the planning department and the city engineer's office agreed upon.
Thank you. Thank you very much
Sure.
for that overview. Mr. Knight or Mr. Martin, did you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion relative to the bill?
Not much beyond what Tiffany mentioned. Certainly a lot of the street vacations we do get are associated with larger either land development plans, lot consolidation plans, things of that nature. So it will, be very kind of rational and reasonable to expect the provision of these kind of public benefits as part of the project. It's not like they're just vacating the street and then saying, oh, great, now we have to, provide a public plaza or something. It's part of a project that they're already usually going to be doing development or kind of redevelopment of the site. So, we find this to be a really great way to bolster the land development plan process and to ensure that we are getting more benefits out of each plan for the public. And so, we're happy to, see these public amenities be kind of enumerated within the legislation. And I think they'll, be a great addition to the city's regulatory regime.
If I may, I would just like to second what Mr. Knight said, Wayne Martin, city engineer, and say that one of the criticisms of our street vacation procedures has been that it was subjective, and so this lays out a very procedural approach and takes some of the subjectivity out of what is deemed a public good. So that'll be beneficial to us as we review petitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Baldock, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
The only thing I just wanted to add is there is an analysis piece to this legislation, and that's the analysis that Jeff Knight has been doing all along. But this just lays it out, as Jeff said, and enumerates it into the city code and puts more of the upfront work on the applicant to provide this information to Jeff, rather than Jeff trying to, figure out all this stuff on his own and putting it into a report.
Thank you. At this time, I will open it up for discussion amongst my colleagues. I'll begin with Vice President Allett. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. So some of the things I was thinking about now, since I've been on council, this discussion has come up a lot. So I'm glad in some ways that we're actually addressing it from a street vacation standpoint. But I'm just kind of curious from a process standpoint, because I realize that in the past, people have gone for the street vacation first, and then they've gone through the development process and the plan development process. So now we're asking in some respects for them to come to that street vacation with a little bit more detail in terms of what they want to do by way of the project. Is that a fair assessment?
That is fair. And they typically go for the street vacation first because they want to do a lot consolidation to obviate some of the zoning relief that they would need if they didn't have the street vacation. But when they do that, once you guys vacate the street, we kind of lose control of anything over the land development piece. So that's why we're asking them to supply more information on the overall project up front.
Yeah, and I get that. I see some value in that, but I'm wondering if how that then relates to then the planning commission and then the process they take, and what changes might occur along that way. Because I have seen several development projects over time change and vary and then have to come back before everything. So I'm wondering, there's a lot of criticism sometimes from development in terms of kind of the red tape that people have to jump through, which in some cases is justified, right? To make sure that we're, doing the checks and balances to make sure we get it done and done correctly and by code and by law. But I'm wondering, with the passage of anything like this, should someone come through us and get that street vacation, are we then essentially signing off on the project? And then what happens if the planning commission acts differently or they make a change and come back through again? Have we addressed kind of the down the road type of scenarios that we would be looking at if we were doing this type of approval at this stage? And I want to say, on one hand, I get it because I think it makes sense to have a sense for what people are doing. I'm just wondering how much are we holding them to that, and then they have to come back around again when the final land development plan is done.
Sure. So typically with street vacations, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, the street vacations go to the planning commission now. They get the street vacation, it comes to city council. And then when the developer comes back through with their land development plan, that goes to the planning commission as well. Sometimes, depending on the project, we encourage them to run their street vacation, their zoning, and their land development all in tandem, so they don't have to do multiple trips in front of planning, zoning, city council. That's not always possible because sometimes financing is dependent on, them getting street vacation and zoning, and the land development plans are, they cost developers quite a bit of money, and they don't want to invest that money until they know for sure where they're headed. So we're not requiring, the official land development plan with every street vacation, but, just more information, whether it's a sketch plan, some ideas, what they are looking at doing. So, you would still be approving the street vacation, and then potentially they would be coming back through with a land development plan.
Right.
But
So
you
then,
could have more of a heads up.
are we tasked then, when we approve then the street vacation, are we then approving the conceptual design of the project as well? And then are we requiring them to come back when it's finalized? And how much latitude do they have at that point? And I'm just trying to get a sense to exactly what happens when we say, yes, go forward, what happens from there for them?
Sure. So they would need to come back if they did not submit their land development plan, their actual land development plan that goes through planning commission, they would have to come back in front of you. What I think this does is when a developer comes in front of you and asks for a street vacation and they say, we are doing X, Y, and Z, and then they end up doing something very different, now in front of city council, they have publicly said they're going to do something, and then they've sort of gone back on their word.
Right.
You have developers that come through that always do a nice job. They do what they say they're going to do. This will now give you an idea of, if there's developers out there, trying to get one over on you, that's that would become very apparent.
Well, and what would the substantive change that we would have to, what I'm saying? If we're proving it conceptually and they change it, is there a barometer that we're looking at that would be something that would be substantive enough to change what the approval that we gave them initially would allow them to do, right? Because essentially we're still just approving the street vacation, even though we're requiring them to submit the land development plan. So we've always tried to put that focus on saying it's a street vacation. There's no legal reason for us not to approve the street vacation. Are we now saying there's no legal reason for us to approve the street vacation and the land development plan as it is?
No, so you would still just be approving the street vacation unless, of course, they came through with their land development plan at the same time. However, with making it very clear about that city council is tasked with making sure the street vacation is for the public good, whatever project they're proposing, they're at least going to have to provide that public good. So you're not tying them necessarily, you're not giving them approval for their land development plan at the street vacation, during the street vacation process. It would largely run the same way. It's just more, holding them to task, if you will, when they finally do come through with their final development.
Yeah, I think the language is written in such a way that there is some flexibility in how they provide the public benefit that's specified through the street vacation process without locking them in. Like to your point, Councilman Allen, if we say, oh, you have to have 10 affordable housing units as part of this project, that doesn't, I don't think, lock the developer into doing them all on the first floor of a multifamily dwelling. Like they may be able to do a bunch of townhomes and still provide those 10 affordable housing units. So long as that public benefit that's noted in the street vacation is included in some way with whatever parameters city council puts on that.
All right, thank you. I'll stop right now and turn it over to anyone else who has questions.
Thanks. President Williams, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. I want to make a statement. I would like to see included in this piece of legislation that anyone who submits a request for development plans or lot consolidations be mandated to have public meetings in the area that they are going to develop. So many times developer comes before city council and they have not met with the public to inform them of what their plans are. So I'd like to see that included in this piece of legislation. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. That's all.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Councilman Allen was asking. So procedurally, someone comes, they submit their application. The public good is, let's say, 10 affordable units. We approve that street vacation, but then they change their mind for whatever reason. The project is a different one. So that they've already received the approval. What's the way to rescind? Is there a way to rescind? How would that work procedurally? Like, do we then charge them a higher fee for, I don't know, what do we do?
That is something we could look at. I mean, if they, sort of renege on their public good, obviously when we get to the development stage, that's when the pressure, I would be looking for, political pressure on them from city council. You are not being a good corporate citizen. But yes, to your point, once the street vacation is approved, unfortunately, at that point, quit claim deeds are typically already been filed. And if their land development plan, does comport to our subdivision and land development ordinance, there is, little, I guess, there's not a huge mechanism other than, like I said, putting pressure on them to be a good corporate citizen.
Yeah, and I think another thing to mention too is that, in that case, if they did change the development proposal, so that they didn't provide so they weren't planning on providing the public benefit that they had noted originally. I don't know if there's a way to then get that back. Tiffany can probably outline that, but an additional thing that the applicants would then have in that case is they would have more land that they'd be paying taxes on too. So they would have taken public right of way and started to pay taxes on them, and then they might not get the development proposals that they're seeking from city council because they turned around and changed their plan after getting approval of a street vacation.
But the reality is, these paper streets end up devaluing the property, right? And that's what makes it harder to get loans and things like that. So we've given them a value, and I think that's something that I would like to see figured out. And the other thing, so this is a bill comprehensively about street vacations in general, not just particularly. We're amending the whole street vacation process. So one of the things, how would you all look at, those paper streets that are in between two homes, where there's two owners have the grass has already grown through the road. Sometimes they don't even realize that it used to be a road. So their ability to show public good.
Well, at that point, Councilwoman Daniels, and Jeff does this. He definitely, city engineer as well, the law bureau. We do look at these paper streets, as we call them, these old grocer alleys. We do look at them differently than a street that's actually being utilized. And in that case, if you just have a paper street, like you're talking about, grass is already growing. At that point, a public benefit could be one, that now this piece of land is going on the tax roll, and you're going to see a little bit more, not much, but a little bit more tax money. The other one is it no longer, it's sort of a cleanup of the city map. So yes, I think there's a much lower burden on these sort of paper alleys, grocer alleys, streets that aren't actually being utilized by motor vehicles.
Yes, I'd like to, maybe that could just be a little bit clearer, because we do still have a few of those streets throughout the city. And, I kind of like it when they get off of our responsibility, because technically they're still our responsibility, right? But if you could somehow make sure that that's clear, that they don't have to, the public good doesn't preclude two private property owners from sharing a road that nobody uses. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Madsen.
Yeah, quick question on the public good, and maybe I'm not understanding it. So if you could provide some clarification, that would be helpful. But why not put in some provisions like local hiring requirements for the development as a public good, or a certain percentage of small business or MWBE participation, prevailing wage, or say livable wage as a public good? Any reason why we wouldn't incorporate some of those things in the legislation for public good?
The public goods that we came up with, we were purely looking at them, one from a planning perspective and from a city engineer perspective. So when you talk about, these sort of other items that could be identified as public goods, we obviously are interested in any input that other people have, what they think a public good may be. And the list of public goods that are in this legislation, it's not exhaustive by any means. These were just some types of examples. So, if you have ideas and you want to make amendments, no one's opposed to that. Like I said, we were looking at this purely from planning and engineering perspective.
Just as a follow-up to that, any curiosity as to why we wouldn't want to put any of, for example, a livable wage defined as $15 an hour? Is there any reason why we wouldn't put that in as a public good?
And when you talk about a living wage, $15 an hour, are you talking about workers who are doing the developments, or, who is making this living wage?
So let's for argument's sake, say the people building, like the AutoZone, the people building the project, saying it would be a public good if the workers there are earning a livable wage or a prevailing wage in working on that site. And then in addition to that AutoZone made a commitment that the people that worked at the AutoZone were earning a $15 minimum wage.
Okay, so you're talking about, it could be either or. You're talking about a commercial project, not residential necessarily, except for the development aspect.
Right.
And yeah, like I said, if these are amendments that you want to see put in there, open to, well, I guess Solicitor Grover might have something to say about that.
Uh-oh.
Well, the pragmatic part is that they'd be completely unenforceable because they'd already have the approved land development plan and the street vacation. And you'd have to assign administrative staff of the city to then sort of audit a project in a way that there is nobody tasked at the moment with that. So there would be an expense to the city with no return to it, because if we couldn't necessarily shut them down once they have the approved plans and the audit didn't satisfy it, unless you started putting some really heavy penalty provisions in for non-compliance. I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of that lever, But if that lever is real, it's got to have a component in it that has a hammer.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just a notion.
Yeah, and as we're working through these various legislations, I mean, that's always what kind of comes up as a common theme is the enforcement piece. But would there be a way to build that in? For example, I know we have to have some oversight for the LERTA program. Could then, I'm not sure what Jamal or how he coordinates with that enforcement, but could he build that into his program in terms of making sure they're in compliance with LERTA? Would it be that hard for him then to check on something like making sure the folks at AutoZone or the workers are being paid a livable wage, quote unquote, for example? And if there was an additional cost, could we just provide him some administrative staff to, support it?
Most of the projects to date would not have been LERTA related. That is, I mean,
Okay.
so you want, if you want an enforcement mechanism, you need to put it in an office that will actually deal beginning to end with the construction. I mean, that's the only way to monitor it. I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just saying it's not in there. And I don't know if I've said this out loud to give the credit to Tiffany and Jeffrey and the committee for all the talk of affordable housing and all the studies. We found no other third-class city that constructed it. So they have constructed this set of bills really from scratch to make the promise of affordable housing in Harrisburg. So there's other things that can be done. It's just when we do one, we have to sort of put it across the four that we're looking at and see if others have to be modified in the process. And if that's what council wishes, I think that's doable.
Okay, no, and I really appreciate the task force work on all of this. I think this is very good progressive legislation. And like from the research I've done, I haven't seen a lot of third-class cities that have done anything like this per se. But yeah, I guess that's it for me, just in terms of we work out a public good and some of these, I'll send out a note. And if there is a mechanism or way we can put that in that the majority of council agrees to, I think we should.
Thank you. Councilman Majors.
Excuse me. Yes. So first question, in terms of the bill, looking at, I guess section 9-117.3 about the majority of property owners required. A says that the petition that someone who's seeking a street vacation will be signed by a majority of the property owners abutting on the line of the proposed street vacation. I think to Council President's earlier point regarding having a local meeting, to me, so what's going to constitute a majority, right? So let's take, for instance, a property that just has two additional property owners on either side, and one signs the petition. Does that constitute a majority, or should we potentially seek 100% of the property owners showing support for the street vacation?
And Councilman Majors, so this language is taken directly from the third-class city code. A
Okay.
majority would be 50% plus one. So yes, if you had two property owners and only one was in favor of the petition, it's not a valid petition.
Okay. So it's going to be the 50% plus one threshold would make it a valid petition.
Yes.
Okay. That was, I guess, one of my concerns is, I think, and I guess we couldn't do any less than the third-class city code would provide, but would it be possible if we were to seek an amendment, could we do more than is proposed in the third-class city code in terms of any ordinance that we would put in place?
I believe you could. I mean, this, the third-class city code, that does set the floor for how many are required, and like it says, in number and interest. But if city council wanted to see a higher threshold of property owners signing on to the petition, that could be a reason that you deny it. That, hey, 4 out of the 9 property owners aren't in favor of it, and then you therefore do not think it's in the interest of the public good anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, that helps me out there. And then on the language regarding public good, I guess, and maybe I'll talk with Chair Bowers about a potential amendment there, just on Part B, starting on line 102, to maybe put some, it should include but not be limited to something, just to note that these are some of the things that we are considering. And then to Councilman Madsen's point, if we want to make some additional changes to what we would deem to be in the public good, I think that could be helpful. But I do appreciate the work of the task force and Chair Bowers, because I think it's good to have. I'm glad we're moving in this manner, because we have had some street vacations which could have benefited from this formal process. The other question I have for either, I don't know if it's for the solicitor, Wayne or Jeff, when a street vacation is approved, how long does it take for it to go from city signing off for it to get recorded with the county?
There isn't an exact time frame, and it's largely dependent on the information we receive. One of the things we require as part of the street vacation is for the applicant to submit quitclaim deeds. And a lot of times the quitclaim deeds we receive either aren't sufficiently legal or they haven't submitted them at all. So this, like right now, we are working with the Teamsters on their Agate Street vacation, which City Council approved, but we are working through the quitclaim deed process with them. So, you know, some of the onus there is on the applicant to make sure that they have submitted all the required documentation.
Okay, and on that piece, so I guess what would come first? If they were, could they submit the quitclaim deeds without the vacation, or they would need the vacation to begin that process?
No, and what we typically do is we ask them, you know, right off the bat to go ahead and submit the quitclaim deeds so we can review them in advance. But sometimes we don't get them in advance.
Okay, and that would be in advance of the street vacation request?
Well, they usually submit it along with their application for the street vacation.
Okay.
It usually all comes together bundled, but like I said, sometimes we don't get the quitclaim deeds at the same time. And then it's, you know, kind of working with them and, you know, making sure they have a survey of the area that has proper legal descriptions. That's one of the things, you know, in the quitclaim deed, we have to have, you have to have deed calls and actual, you know, meets and bounds of the street. It's not something that we can develop on our own without all that requisite underlying information.
Right. Okay. All right. No, good. I think I may look to yeah, I'll be reaching out to the solicitor's office and you, Chair Bowers, on that piece. I think if we're going to make this attempt to streamline things, if we could tighten some of that information up as well, so that that's additional work on the Planning Bureau and the solicitor's office. I'm trying to think if we're going to, you know, make these changes, let's streamline it so the onus is on the applicant to provide us with the information so we can, you know, move as, you know, as quickly as possible through that process, but still have the ability to say, hey, look, you just can't go ahead and make these requests and not have all your paperwork in order, because that's additional time and effort for administration staff, especially if we're looking to include this as a part of the public good. So with that, I'll stop for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Green.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bowers. First, I'd like to apologize if you can't understand me. I had some dinner work today and my mouth is still kind of numb, so please bear with me here. Most of my questions have been asked, but I do have one question that kind of comes back to what Vice President Allett was talking about. When it comes to the preliminary land development plans, how much onus can we put on this plan? For instance, if someone comes before us for a street vacation and we don't like the preliminary land development plan, is that grounds enough, like legally, to deny their street vacation?
I think one of the things that, you know, developers, one of the complaints, yes, that we get is that the process has been subjective and not as transparent as people would like. So that's why we're trying to lay out these criteria. So we aren't putting city council in a position to make arbitrary decisions. I think that's the main point, is to make sure that, you know, you are fair in deciding these things. But yes, to your point, if a project came along and it was so, you know, maybe it was in line with our saldo, but crossed all bounds of anything that you wanted to see in the city, yes, then you would not have to, you know, you do not have to grant a street vacation. It is a discretionary vote.
Okay. I think that's the only question that I have at the moment. So thank you.
You're welcome. We wish you healing with your dental work. So this concludes Bill 18 of 2020. I'm sorry, Councilman Mason.
All right, sorry. Tiffany, I just want to make sure it's still clear. So street vacations still do remain at the council of discretion, at council's discretion, right? Nothing in here is saying, you know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There is nothing in here that is saying if you provide one of these public goods that you automatically get your street vacation. That is not what we are saying. We are saying you check the box for a public good. The vote, what city council does with a street vacation, that is absolutely discretionary. It remains discretionary.
Right. And the public hearing process still remains, so we could still receive public input from, you know, residents and or anybody abutting or anyone in that vicinity or any member of the city. So I just want to make sure
absolutely
that it's clear that, you know, you can go through all this whole process, but there still is some discretion and there still is that piece. It sounded like it was, we were getting to a point where it was like, hey, if you fill all this out, you should be good, and developers have some, I think this gives developers and the city a little bit more of a clear path on what they need to do to get to that process, but the ultimate decision is still at the discretion of whoever would be on council.
Absolutely. And that is the goal of this, is to make it a more transparent process. So developers know what's required of them and what they have to provide, and that city departments aren't doing the bulk of the legwork. Planning spends a lot of time on street vacations.
Right.
The city engineer does, and the law bureau does. So we're trying just to tighten up the process.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. I saw Vice President Allett and President Williams, so I'll move forward with Vice President Allett first.
So, Tiffany, I wanted to circle back to something you said, because I just want to be clear on this, because I know this has been a concern for us when we've met and discussed any type of planning project that comes before us, is the subjective nature of things. And I want to be clear, because I realize that if there's any area that we set us up for any type of legal liability or recourse, it's kind of development projects. If we act against what our city code and laws say to be able to do. So can you just circle back to what you mentioned about council's discernment and the subjective nature of what we would be approving kind of going forward, and speaking to that, because I still don't, I guess I want to avoid the conversations that council's acting because we didn't physically like the project, but there was no legal reason for us to deny the project. I think, not without bringing it political, but that was the big discussion around AutoZone, when there was discussion around, there was some thought, some people, well, name names, didn't like that it was an AutoZone, but we felt very strongly in our act as council that whether it was AutoZone or what, there was no legal reason for us not to move forward with that project. And so if you could speak to some of that subjective nature, that's what I'm concerned with in this bill, that I don't want to leave too many things to quote discernment that may set us up for a legal recourse if we're not acting in the best interest of how the law prescribes us to do.
Sure. So with the street vacation, as we noted, absolutely discretionary. When you're talking about a land development plan, if it comports, if it's in compliance with the city's subdivision and land development ordinance, if it complies in every way, and you don't have a legal basis to deny it, I'm not saying that you would have to vote yes, because no one can make you vote any particular way, but it would become deemed approved eventually if it comports with the land development ordinance. So when it comes to land development, you are constrained by by what you can, approve and not approve. But like I said, I'm not saying you have to vote in a certain way, but ultimately, if a land development plan is in compliance, it would become approved one way or another. Maybe not by city council, but maybe by the court. Now with AutoZone, because they needed a subdivision, they needed a street vacation to get through their land development plan. If you used your discretion and denied the street vacation, then they never would have had a land development plan that was in compliance.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So when you start talking about a street vacation in conjunction with land development, the street vacation is necessary to make the land development in compliance.
Right, but in that same example, and this is a question I have to that because, and again, sorry to kind of belabor, I think it's really important for us to discuss this and make sure we set a precedent for understanding, because it's not just this council, but future councils to act in accordance. But if we had denied their street vacation, would there have been a legal recourse they could take against the city in that respect to overturn if they did not feel that we had a justified reason to do so?
I think that if they thought that you were being completely arbitrary, and they may be able, they can always, go to court, not saying they would necessarily win.
Right.
And that's sort of what we talk about when we're talking about a transparent process, that you are treating all developers the same.
Right.
And if you really didn't want an AutoZone where they were placing the AutoZone, you could say for a host of reasons why you did not want it there, and then deny plan. If you were just saying, well, I don't like AutoZone because I don't like a particular developer, that's then when you're starting to get into arbitrary decisions.
Right, but I think that's important too, because it's particularly when it comes to the way, like the political influence that some developers may want to have on city council, that I think that's really important for us not to act in an arbitrary fashion and make sure that how we're acting is backed up by the way that the law is written, and to reduce any instance of an arbitrary decision, because I feel like that's what would set us up for future challenges.
Sure, is right, as long as you're not arbitrary, but you do have a lot of discretion, especially when something's tied to a street vacation, to say, well, we like this proposal, but we don't like it in this area of the city, or we don't want to see it in X, Y, and Z place. And then you state your reasons why, whether it's, the gateway to the city and you don't want a particular project in a particular area. I think you do have that discretion, and you would be on strong legal footing as long as you articulated reasons why. And like I said, it's not just because, well, I went to high school with that guy and I don't like him. You, as long as you're articulating real, demonstrable reasons, then you're going to be you'll be on strong legal footing.
I had a quick question. Sorry, I don't know if I'm cutting. Oh, I think Wanda had all right, I'll go after President Williams.
Okay. President Williams.
That's all right, Mr. Maxon, go ahead. But no, I think, Tiffany, you have answered that, because I wanted to know the outcome if we denied a street vacate. Now, we've done a lot of street vacates, and I know that we have not benefit from that. So my question to you is that we were looking at a street vacation legislation that would benefit the city as well as the developer, because the developer makes out because he now has a street that we vacated and he doesn't pay any taxes on.
Well, and that's part of when the quitclaim deed gets recorded,
Right.
the street does become part of their property and they own it in fee simple. So
Okay.
yes, they should then be paying taxes on that piece of land that they have acquired from the city.
Right. And that's a gain for them, but a loss for the city. Because I think in the last few years, we vacated a lot of streets.
Yes, we have vacated quite a few streets, but I think up until now, we have vacated a lot of paper streets.
Right.
And like I said, once the quitclaim deeds are filed, then it is on the property owners to pay taxes on that portion of the street that they now own.
Okay. I would just like to see something included in this legislation again as an amendment that not only for the paper streets, but for those streets that that hold some sort of revenue bearing for the city be included, because a lot of developers are gaining and the city is, and the outcome is not getting anything. And we vacated a lot of paper streets this year.
Yes, we have. And, you know, we are.
Or last
hopeful
year,
that-
I'm sorry, last year. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that identifying a public good is to the benefit of the city. Yes, it's not cash to the city, but an overall benefit to the residents and the community.
Not always, Tiffany, it's benefit
Right.
most of the developers. More so the developer percentage is higher for the developers than the residents, because the residents didn't receive anything out of the vacating of some of these streets.
Yes, so
That were not paper streets.
yes, and that's why we are hoping that this process and identifying, making the developer submit a public good proposal will let city council, you know, see exactly what the public good is.
Okay, I'm still not in agreement, but I'll do an amendment in the next few days. I'll think about that, because it's like giving the developer continuing revenue and the city receives nothing in return. And they continuously come to the city of Harrisburg and develop within the last 16 years that I've been here, and they've been profiting from that. And I don't want to see a continual profit and the residents are not receiving anything in return. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Madsen.
Yeah, this may be an odd hypothetical, but it kind of ties into a situation that we had. What if you had, say, a proposed medical marijuana facility that wanted to do a street vacation, but council, or technically the federal government, still views marijuana as a controlled substance? So in a sense, the federal government is saying that this is, or it is an illegal substance. And then by definition would cause harm to the community. I guess maybe this is getting a little in the weeds, but I guess in a situation like that, where say the community went forward and said, we do not want a medical marijuana facility in our community, it's against the public interest or good. What would we do in an instance like that, if that makes any sense?
And I do think if you're, you know, going back to street vacation and a particular development, that's, if you find that that particular, you know, project is not in the public good, then that's where, you know, you can exercise your discretion and deny a street vacation.
Okay.
But
And then we would be
you
in,
know, when medical marijuana came through, it was purely land development plan,
Right.
which was in line with the SALDO.
Right. I'm just thinking in a future instance, if we had a medical marijuana facility and they had to use a street vacation, the community came out forcefully against it, council would be within our rights to object or vote it down in that instance.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns relative to Bill 18? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward with Bill 19 of 2020. Mr. Petrosky, if you could please read it into the record.
Yeah, Bill 19 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Chapter 5-503 Tax Abatement and Exemptions of Title 5 Licensing and Taxation Code to adjust real estate tax incentives to better provide for the development of affordable housing units in the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Jones is joining us this evening.
Yes, I am. Good evening, Councilwoman Bowers.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I guess we can begin the discussion. If you could sort of frame for the council members and for the public viewing how LRTA is being utilized right now.
Okay. Actually, I have a short presentation that I'd like to share, which explains LRTA, and I think it adds some explanation to the current amendment.
Thank you.
The LRTA program, again, for anyone who may not be aware, or for those of us in attendance, LRTA, through the city of Harrisburg, in an effort to promote and encourage new development as well as rehabilitation of existing structures, has enabled the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Program, or LRTA. So this was legislation which was passed in May of 2015. Basically, the city believes that this tool will assist in eventual tax base increases, creation of jobs, and aid the overall redevelopment of the city. The city of Harrisburg School District and Dauphin County have each also passed the same resolution. I'll explain a little bit about how LRTA works. Basically, what happens is once properties apply, or property owners apply for the tax abatement, once approved, their property goes into an exemption schedule. So when a property is improved through substantial renovation or new construction of a structure or site, renovation of a property is reassessed and a new value is placed on the property. The LRTA program allows property owners to pay abated taxes on the new tax assessed amount for a period of 10 years. Abatements are either 50% or 100% based on the nature of the project. So I'll explain a little bit more about the nature of the project as we continue. So for certain types of projects, there are some qualifying conditions that need to be met in order to qualify and to receive the abatement. So for any qualifying new construction project under this chapter, the applicant shall certify and provide documented proof that the following conditions shall or have been satisfied. So just to summarize, what you're looking at, those three conditions are: one, that the project needs to utilize a 15% minority workforce; two, 15% of the labor force needs to be residents of the city of Harrisburg; and thirdly, the project should pay the workforce at a prevailing wage rate at the time of construction. So those, that's generally just kind of explanation of LRTA and the qualifying conditions. Next, I wanted to share some data over the past year on the, just to kind of illustrate the current state of the program. So what you're looking at is a chart which I created based on records from the City Codes Department. What this illustrates is that when individuals will apply for a building permit, at the same time, they're able to apply for the abatement program. So during 2020, there were just over 1,100 building permits issued. Of that, 46 of those projects applied for the abatement. And then below that, there's a breakdown of I mentioned before, there are different types of projects that may qualify for abatement. So 1 through 6 there, list the different types of construction projects that may qualify for abatement. So basically what you're looking at is, under 5%, of the total amount of projects that received a building permit, under 5% of those actually said, hey, I would like to apply for the abatement as well. And I mentioned earlier about the, how that abatement is received. So, once a property owner does identify that they would like to be considered for the abatement, Dauphin County is actually the entity that conducts the property assessment and establishes the new value on the property. So just moving along with some continuing on with some data for you to take a look at. I have here both the 2020 tax year, where you can see that in 2020 there were 270 properties in the abatement program. Of that, the taxable amount was over $37 million, and of that, the exempt amount, so this would be the amount that those properties were exempt based on their enrollment into LRTA, was over $10 million. So going into this taxable year, 2021, you'll see that the amount of properties took a dip, so it's down to 197, as did both taxable amount and the total exempt amount. So the the reduction in the decrease in those numbers can be attributed to two things. Two factors. One is some of those properties had reached the end of that 10-year abatement period, so they aged out of the program. But in addition to that, the limited amount of new applicants, has not allowed the program to kind of replenish those properties that are exiting the program because their abatement period finished. So, which brings us to the amendment, which is there. It was just read into the record. But the purpose of the amendment, which I wanted to discuss, says the city finds that easing the qualifying conditions necessary for development to receive certain tax abatements will encourage the development of affordable housing within the city, increasing the public good. So based on some feedback that I received over the course of the past year through conversations with, I'd say anywhere from about 12 to 15 different developers, in that, the qualifying conditions in some cases have either discouraged them from applying for LRTA. And again, these developers are developers that have, worked on projects in the city in the past, maybe are currently working on projects, or developers that may be new to the city and are considering doing work in Harrisburg. But some of the feedback I received was that they had difficulty identifying and validating the workforce to meet the city residency requirement. Based on what we discussed, is that just sometimes due to the nature of the construction industry, individuals may travel for work. Those individuals do not always live in the city, so that would exclude them, from the residency. That would exclude them, and they would not be able to meet the residency requirement. Or just in some cases, it may be difficult to validate addresses, and just to get the necessary information that they would need to certify that those individuals do live in the city. And secondly, the prevailing wage requirement. Without public funding on a project, what's been expressed to me is that paying prevailing wage can significantly increase the project cost. As it stands currently, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's prevailing wage requirement states that for jobs that are receiving public funding and are in excess of $25,000, those are the projects that must pay prevailing wage. So in some cases, a developer may not be receiving public funding. Maybe their project may be funded through, maybe funded privately. So paying that prevailing wage, as I stated, may significantly increase the project cost, which, on the back end, in terms of, we're looking at, creating affordable housing. Those costs are going to be absorbed, somewhere, which, potentially would increase the overall cost of the project, which, potentially could pass, those costs on to the individuals who are going to be either renting or purchasing the housing that was built. So lastly, just looking at potential benefits of this amendment to ease those qualifying conditions. One, it clarifies and reinforces the program requirements. So I think for any developer that is interested in creating affordable housing in the city, by amending the ordinance, they are able to see that there is an investment on the city's part into creating some incentives for affordable housing projects. Which brings me to the second point, incentivizing affordable housing development and also increasing the availability of affordable housing for residents in the city. And finally, through, what we hope is that, through easing those conditions, it would encourage, more individuals to apply for LRTA, to take advantage of that tax abatement, which would support eventual tax base increases. That brings me to the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thorough report. Certainly appreciate it. It's helpful to for a refresher for some that weren't even sure what LERTA stood for. So thank you. I just had one question before I open it up to my colleagues.
Sure.
In the presentation, you mentioned that abatements are either 50% or 100%, but with this amendment, they would receive 100% of the abatement. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will open it up for questions from my colleagues. We will begin with Vice President Allett. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions right now, but I'm glad that this component is going to be part of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Williams, any questions?
I'm sorry, I had muted myself. Jamal, I do have a question. You said the developers had problems identifying the workforce. Where did they go to, what outreach did they utilize to look for that workforce?
Well, in many cases, for example, there is also the MBE, WBE requirement. So we do,
Exactly.
The city maintains a database of developers that are, either minority businesses or women-owned businesses. In addition, part of our city's outreach, we work with the African American Chamber of Commerce and also the PA Diversity Coalition. So both of those organizations maintain pretty strong membership. So if a developer reaches out, to me, in addition to our list, I'm able to kind of outsource and direct them to those organizations. And again, that's, with regard to the minority participation. As far as city requirements, again, the city could be a resource for companies, but again, those companies, may or may not be, employing the city-based workforce that would allow them to meet that requirement. A business that's in the city currently, they're under no obligation to employ any percentage of city workforce. So, that may or may not, satisfy that developer's need in finding individuals that work in Harrisburg and have Harrisburg addresses.
Yes, I'm aware that you have all that data for them. That's why I was concerned that they didn't do outreach to you to find that information or to obtain that information. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and again, the data that we're tracking, would be, businesses in the area, and that business may be a city-based business, but we are really unable to say how much of that businesses, how many of their employees are city residents. Okay, so that's not always information that we can provide.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jones.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilman Madsen, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification purposes, and I do apologize if I missed this in Mr. Jones's presentation. So if you're a developer, you would have the option to either do the affordable housing piece or the prevailing wage, minority, small business, or local participation, correct?
I'm sorry. Are you speaking of the additional conditions that to LERTA?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is it, and I apologize if I missed this, but I guess for the affordable housing, would that be separate from the prevailing wage and the local participation, or is it all three components into one LERTA?
No, the amendment states that if, once a developer project was certified as an affordable housing project, if they intended to apply for the tax abatement or apply for the LERTA, then those conditions would be eliminated for that affordable housing project. So basically once they're certified as affordable housing, they say, that they would like to receive the tax abatement, then that means that those three additional conditions would be relaxed.
I see.
As an incentive for them to build the affordable housing.
I understand. Okay, good. All right, thank you. And then I guess my concern is that as of right now, until I know we're sort of working through it, having some sort of requirement for local participation, I don't know of any other mechanism the city has outside of Alerta to incentivize local business participation or local workforce participation. So I feel like we're kind of, I don't know what other mechanism we would have in place if we were to make this amendment to strongly encourage that participation. So that's just one thing. The other piece about the LRTA that I kind of have concern over as a general policy, and we encountered some of this over the summer, where once the abatement runs out and the property gets reassessed, we've had instances where tenants or homeowners see a significant tax increase. And if my fear is that the purpose of this is well intentioned, right? We want to increase this affordable housing, but once that abatement or ends and the property gets reassessed, would it then make with this, if they saw a tax increase, would that then sort of price those people out that we were initially trying to help to begin with, if that makes sense?
Yes, that is an aspect of LRTA, which from time to time, it does make itself, it does appear. I do think that the 10-year abatement period is pretty standard when you look at abatement programs across many municipalities. But obviously, yes, I don't think we want any legislation that becomes a hurdle or an obstacle for residents. So at some point, I think that would be something to address. But I wanted to respond to your one point about the conditions are really not having those conditions to encourage participation. If you look at LRTA as it stands, for a residential improvement project, currently, those conditions don't apply to a developer. And from the data I showed earlier, only 4% of the applicants are choosing to take advantage of potentially a 100% tax abatement for 10 years. So, and that's these are projects that don't have to meet those conditions. So I think once you consider adding on those additional conditions that potentially is makes it doesn't make the abatement as attractive when you look at those conditions. And I think we see I think that is driving down the amount of new construction or significant redevelopment that the city's seeing. So our intent is to make this to make this an incentive to get the affordable housing built, which in turn is going to benefit our residents.
So when counter, I guess, first on the housing piece that happens when you have the abatement, I don't know, are third class cities able to do some sort of rent control or some kind of mechanism that would put it in place that person sort of gets grandfathered in to that price, even if they saw this sort of reassessment? And I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know if there's any such policy, but or if that would be even feasible. But yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is that would be my recommendation, to be proactive about those folks that would encounter that tax increase.
Yeah, well, as it stands now, if the property would change hands, during that 10 years, the abatement is attached to the property itself, not to the owner. So if if a new home is in the abatement program, and one owner would sell it, to a new owner at year 5, then that new owner still receives that tax abatement, but it's going to expire in 5 years, as opposed to coming in at the very start and getting the full 10-year abatement. So yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that does need to be addressed if we can.
Yeah, and then I guess one counter to the prevailing wage minority or the usage of the LRTA as it stands. I mean, we are starting to see some shifts in real estate. It seems that our area or our market's becoming more and more in demand. Just recently, I just saw that article that said the Harrisburg metro area is one of the top 50 places to live in the United States. I mean, could we hit a point where this is very demand property compared to where it was over the last 10 years, and developers would be more willing to take a hard look at some of these things? And I guess that's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah. I mean, I would think so. Which is why I think in the when we look at the abatement, it's if we're hopeful, we do think that more if we're able to encourage more development, then the city will reap the benefits of that in the future. But it's tough to know. We like I said, we have to do to be hopeful that that's the outcome.
Yeah, and then I guess just one last piece is from a financial standpoint. I mean, with this abatement, I mean, how much, given that we're seeing high demand in our real estate, how much, and if this is used more, I guess from a budget standpoint, I guess it's impossible to predict. But I mean, are we, for example, losing some revenue funds that simply could have just been used to used towards more capital improvement projects for affordable housing, for example?
That's tough to know. I wouldn't have that answer right now.
I'm just sort of speaking out loud, I guess. But yeah, that's it for me. I guess if we could address those concerns, particularly for folks that may exchange property or something that we can put in place, so when that abatement ends, the very population we're trying to help doesn't lose out at the end of the abatement.
Yeah, and I think to your point there, that would need to be kind of addressed in the ordinance itself, as opposed to just to this specific amendment, potentially.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I'm at is I don't know that I like LRTA actually, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Thank you.
Sure.
So just to clarify, I guess I had 2 points. Thank you for clarifying that the abatement is attached to the property and not the owner. I think sometimes that gets a little confused. And then my next thought is, so if that particular amendment were to the ordinance itself would be drafted, the county and the school district would also have to agree to the amendment to the ordinance as well, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Bowers, just real quick, how would that, for the school district, it being under receivership, how does all that work? Do we know?
We need their sign.
Thanks, Neil.
Neil, I didn't hear you.
We need their sign off.
The states?
We need the receiver's sign off on behalf of the school district. The mayor's had discussions with the receiver regarding the LRTA bill and various other things, but ultimately we need their sign off. Historically, what the county has done has said to the city on LRTA's legislation that if the school district, which is the largest player on real estate tax, is willing to go along with an identical proposal, then the county's been willing to go along with it. If the school district and the city don't come to an identical proposal, there's not a whole lot for the county to do at that point. So we do ultimately have to get them on board. And right now, under the law, that means the receiver has to concur.
Would it be possible to get something in writing from the receiver if they would be in agreement so that council has that before we vote?
So I think it's not a chicken or an egg thing. I think if the council can vote, and if the receiver doesn't sign on, then that's a condition of the thing going into place. So it's not one or the other. I mean, that's a condition council has put on this, that the receiver, school district has to step into place too. The school district can have the same condition. So it's really, you got to have proof that both decisions have been made in a public setting to really pull this off. And that happens in every piece of legislation. So it's not one or the other. I mean, I think you're conditioned, it's conditioned both ways. You have to end up with both. It doesn't matter legally which one does it first.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilman Mattson, or?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Daniels, any questions?
No, but I think just kind of going along with the comments of Councilman Mattson, the LERTA plan we currently have benefits the developer that buys and sells properties more so than the developer that's renting out properties. So trying to figure out how, where the incentive is for the renter is the area where I'm trying to figure out how the incentive actually works from a business model perspective. And, one of the things that crossed my mind today was when I was looking at, the tax relief a property would get. And sometimes I think where we get the wiggle room to play with is the fair market value rent, with how we set that amount. Because for some properties, the benefit to them really per unit ends up being like $400 if you look at the tax abatement that they would get. For others, it will be a little bit less. So trying to calibrate that fair market value rent in a way that fairly affects a small developer versus a larger developer, or a smaller unit, smaller multifamily building versus a really large multifamily building, I think is an area where we need to look at more closely, because the fair market value rents that we're basing affordability off of are still pretty high for the region, for Harrisburg, even though they're, the affordable rental rates. So I think that's room that we need to look at really closely as we're navigating both the LERTA side with the, what's the affordable rent side amount. But that's just my thought.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions?
No, my apologies. I had to step away for a minute, so I'll follow up in writing with any question that I may have on that program. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Green.
No, I don't have any questions about this piece of legislation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So this concludes the work of the Building and Housing Committee. Thank you very much to the members of the Affordable Housing Task Force and Ms. Baldock for all of your assistance this evening. I misspoke earlier. I mentioned that Bill 16 of 2020 would be tabled. Please note that all three bills, Bill 16 of 2020, Bill 18 of 2020, and Bill 19 of 2020 will remain in the Building and Housing Committee to ensure that we have ample time for additional discussion and comment relative to amendments. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. We now move on to Public Works Committee. Committeeman, Mr. Majors.
Thank you, President Williams. I guess, excuse me, there are two resolutions in the Public Works Committee that we will be discussing. But first, we are looking to receive an update on the Ngozi Let's Get Dirty Urban Agriculture Greenhouse Project in Reservoir Park. And I'm looking here. I see, all right, I see Ms. Muhammad. And I don't know if anyone else is going to be speaking on this, or will Ms. Muhammad, you will be giving us the presentation first. I don't know if there's anyone from the city that wanted to speak first before we turn it over to Ms. Muhammad. I don't see, I see Dave Baker, but I don't know if Chris Nate or anyone else from the city. I see Chris. I don't know if either one wanted to speak first and then we'd hand it over. Chris, there you are.
I'm okay.
Okay, good. All right. See Ms. Muhammad. I guess we'll turn it over to you for an update and presentation.
Okay, thank you, and greetings, everyone, and greetings, council members, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's been a little bit since Ngozi has came and myself to give you an update about what's going on up in the greenhouse area. So I want to keep it real brief and short. There's a lot of information, but I'm also willing to answer any questions after this presentation through phone calls, emails, or either having another meeting if you would like. First off, what I would like to do is I'm going to work backwards a little bit because there has been some good things that's really been happening. We're excited. We have somewhere around about $100,000 or a little less, and Chris can help me with some of those figures if I'm misspeaking on that, to grow food in the greenhouse area. The goal, I want to just, for those that don't know, there's been some questions pretty much in the community about how did I acquire the particular property? How did I get access? How did I get to this point? And what funds were used? There seems to be some serious concerns about what funds was used to get us to this point. So I do want to bring back around 2005, 2006. I had met with then Mayor Stephen R. Reed. I had been knowing him ever since I was a young woman, and told him that I would like to see if I could utilize that property. I knew at that time it was been sitting for about 20 years, underutilized, not being used at all, not really even being maintained by the city. And the question was, what did I want to do? I told him I wanted to teach our residents how to become farmers, potentially, talked about permaculture and came to council several occasions, explained and educated council members at the time about what permaculture was. I was talking about sustainability then before we had a coordinator and EAC and all. So I was bringing all this stuff to council and to our city residents then back in 2005. Fast forward around 2012 through 15, conducted a series of permaculture classes where we did some concept plans for that area. We certified 26 individuals out of 4 counties. I was under direction, again, under the Reed administration and transitioning into the Thompson administration. The person that I was appointed to report to, get any permissions from to do anything I needed to do was Director Aaron Johnson of Public Works. And then after that, what we did is bringing us a little bit more fast forward around the time of 2018, Director Johnson asked me to work with then Ron Taylor, who was, I think he was some type of sustainable director or something in the department as we were moving forward, to help move those plans and programs along. So I want to kind of stop there and just go back a little bit. Ngazi written all the funding and everything we needed to do to get us to this point. We never, or I've never asked the city for a dime. I've always brought resources to the city, always came to council, presented like I'm doing now, sharing what those resources were, what that would work and how that would improve the community. And this was an excellent presentation this evening. I learned a lot, and I've done a lot of the things that y'all had said. I'm not a developer, but I've done some of those things to benefit our community. Our community is a food apartheid. We are not a food desert, and that's a whole nother conversation. We're a food apartheid. Our children, as y'all know, are hungry. I know a couple of years ago, we were like 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 that goes to bed hungry. I know that. I'm from this community. This is my home. I'm born and raised on Raleigh Street, so I'm a Midtown person. I notice it bothers me. I have a lot of grandchildren, and I wonder if some of my grandchildren fit that data. I wanted to do something about that, and to this day, still want to do something about that. So brought funding, resources, got us to a certain point. Met with Mr. Taylor, brought the concept plans that we constructed. At that point, the whole operation went to a whole nother direction. I'm just going to be very honest. It's been a struggle since then to really kind of move the project a little forward. Yes, we have garnished funding within the last year or so, maybe pushing close to 2 years. Those dollars are dedicated or restricted to feed the residents. Allison Hill, 17103, 104, and 102 zip codes on how to grow food in that area. We have planted apple trees up in there, which unfortunately are gone. We put 16 up in there when we were doing the classes. All the topsoil over the 20 plus years that has been accumulated is gone because no one contacted me, I guess under the orders of Mr. Taylor at the time, to bring me to the table. So there was other plans with our concept plans to do other things in that area, other what I had promised the original Mayor Stephen R. Reed, and council at that time, what we would do was to turn it into an urban agriculture center to educate our community. We can be a beacon of this region. There's nothing like that except if you go to Lancaster, Philly, Pittsburgh, which a lot of them are my models, excuse me, who are doing much more and ahead of us, which I would like for us to see. So there's been some serious conversation of the existing greenhouse will cost us about, at that time, when I got some estimates, we was over the $100,000, $150,000 range. And around about this time, it would probably be about $200 and some thousand, which is something that we don't want to do. I promised the city and I promised Mayor Reed at the time that this would be an off-grid operation, that it would not be a burden to the city, because that's why it shut down in the first place. It was cheaper to do other things instead of keeping that up and going. With that being said, putting systems in place, when we talk about permaculture, you put systems in place and they stay there, they function just like how you're mimicking what nature does. And we have that capacity. We can catch water. We've grown food over the years. Some of y'all on this call have been with me over the years, and to see what we have grown. I think one time at a council meeting, I even came and brought a harvest and shared it with council. So we've done a lot. There's been some debate against me and this existing greenhouse and bringing it back to the original state, putting everything back to the way it used to be when some of us was children, when we knew how that greenhouse used to function. There was a meeting back in July of 2020. There was a greenhouse group that came together. I was specifically told that by the gentleman named Zachary, I think he's on the city's planning commission, that I was particularly out of line, that I need to pretty much step back. Him and I'm not sure, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Young professionals be coming up and doing what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it, and then they will come back and direct to the community on what they've done. Basically, we'll accept whatever y'all do. And that meeting didn't go down well at all. There was also a rebuttal back from one of the people that was on the call, Ms. Candace Baltimore, who is president-elect of Civics Club, who was very upset of what she heard, because people have been coming to the greenhouse meeting calls talking about growing food, not growing trees and flowers. So it just seems like within the administration, there's this group of, and this is just how I feel, this is what I see, this is what I've been dealing with, a group of people that really been, kind of like fighting me tooth and nail right now to move forward to grow food. I've been waiting since last year and getting things approved. Getting things approved like what? When I was working with the Reed and Thompson administration, I worked, like I said, with Mr. Johnson. I worked with the Law Bureau, which at that time was Ms. Carlicia. And I also worked with one other individual, and it's slipping my mind, I'm sorry. Right now, it seems like I got 6 layers and nothing's getting done to move forward. I just feel like I'm being kind of like handicapped. I got an audit ran on me. I didn't know that y'all ran audits on vendors. Y'all know I've been working with this city for over 30 some years. Yes, there's records there. I ask, what do I need to do? I never really get a good, correct answer. So I got an audit ran, and there was something that I didn't do a report about. So that slowed down some paperwork. I'm waiting on getting the application done. We're in COVID-19, so there's some things that I requested that need to happen up in the park so we can bring community up there. We're only talking about 15 people. There's a series of classes that's going on. That was back in the September, still waiting on approval. I want to jump fast forward to right now. We got a greenhouse. I'm sorry, high tunnel. We don't want to use or rebuild the old greenhouse. Since there's a group of people that they're determined to grow trees and flowers in there, then they can do that. I've never said that that's my property. I know it belongs to the city, but I am the city. I am a resident. It belongs to me just like everybody else. So it's plenty to do up there. But my goal was not to put a burden back on the city. So we're talking about off grid. So what I did was able to get funding for high tunnels. There were 3 that will be distributed throughout the city. The city of Harrisburg in the greenhouse area, because we have the footprint there. It'll be an enhancement to what we have there. It's not taking away, not pulling away, not changing a footprint. It will be an enhancement. High tunnels are also removable, but we don't want to put them up and down. We want to grow food. We want to establish agricultural center as what we had said that we would do in the past, and that's what we would want to do. We gave dimensions. I believe it was 30 by 72 feet. We have concept drawings that now have went to Black and Associates. Those drawings are now ready for building. I'm excited when I see those drawings and how they look now. They're ready for building. I feel that this is a gift I'm giving to y'all. We're taking a piece up there that nobody wanted, and now it seems like everybody wants it, and they're trying to move me out of a situation or make it very, very difficult to move forward to feed our community. I want to work with everybody. I just want to move forward. I don't know what more to do. I don't know what all these layers, I just need one person or two people to work with, what I need to do to move our projects forward. We have some funding in place right now. We're looking at this year growing season to hopefully get the high tunnels up. The other two high tunnels will be at the Camp Curtin YMCA, who has already submitted their paperwork, and Boys and Girls Club, who has almost 2 acres, who's already submitted their paperwork. I've always shared with y'all, my goal is to feed our city. And I'm looking at demographically, we got Hill, Uptown, South Side. We're looking at thousands of people that have done properly and correctly can do that. We shouldn't be having hungry babies going to bed hungry. So I'm just looking at how I can make good, as I just heard earlier, in a spot that nobody cared about. But now, because things are moving forward, it's all these roadblocks. I'm just trying to see how we can all work together to ease up some of the roadblocks so we can make this project come more into fruition. There's a lot more here. It's a long night. I don't want to go into details. I do want to share with you that some of the $25,000 that we're going to do this year to grow food is reaching out 50 families. They will learn how to, I always take trash and turn it into gardens. So they will be learning how to take some totes and cheers and learning how to grow mushrooms out of our cardboard, taking it out of our waste stream. Of course, we're buying all the stuff new, but we're looking around their home, getting people to think differently. We have a sustainability coordinator in our city. We have a recycle coordinator in our city, trying to get the information out there. I try to work with this to make it happen. So it's just, I have a lot of, my frustration is there, but I just have too many layers to be working through. And one thing I would just want to say is that I have reached out to the community. We have 4,000 people that's engaged with us, waiting to see what we're going to happen. I have the 50 families that's ready to participate. I can't move forward until I get the go ahead to move forward, the application process, what I need from legal as far as liabilities. Written in the grant is the PPE that we need to get so the city doesn't have to purchase that. We're out of the way. We're not in a street. We're tucked away, but we're tucked away to a point that we can also utilize the area and get the people directly across the street and within a perimeter to learn how to eat properly and healthy and to keep us healthy.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for that presentation. I guess first I'll ask, I guess, our sustainability coordinator, in terms of next steps, what is needed from either council or the administration to move these projects forward? I'm in receipt of your email from a little earlier today regarding some of the minute meetings and agendas, and I guess the design plan from Ed Black and Associates. So what would be next steps for us to move either the greenhouse project and the high tunnel project forward?
Well, I was able to confirm earlier today that there's still time to be able to try to apply in terms of the looking at the EQIP program with USDA. They're going to be reviewing those applications on March 5th. And I was advised by Diana Asades at USDA that as long as they were in receipt of anything prior to that point in time, so it could be considered, that's still something that we can, that's a possibility. A conversation I had with Rafika on Friday pointed out that the information that was originally put in said that there were more details were needed for what was asked for in the application. She pointed out rightfully, and I understand her frustration with this, between the previous applications that have been put in, previous proposals from the 2013 period that she mentioned, as well as the Witt Family Foundation grant. Pretty much all that information had already existed in one form or another. I spent some time over the weekend and most of today compiling all of that, and I just sent it to Rafika and some other members of the greenhouse group to review, to see about submitting as soon as we can. So we should be able to move forward with that. In terms of the funding that she mentioned before, so far there's been, in terms of actual dollars, $80,000 received. 2 Witt Family Foundation grants for $25,000, one to pay for the plans and design from Ed Black and Associates, one that was applied for with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank and Ngazi for gardening classes. $25,000 from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank simply for programming and materials costs, and $5,000 from the Rotary Club for the ADA accessible garden beds, which we currently have over on the site. So, I mean, the greenhouse group, we just need to review what was put together and agree, and that we'll, and then present it, to saying that we're supportive of that proposal to be able to move forward and do that application.
There's just one thing I wanted to mention, and thank you, Chris, for that. What we were attempting to do was that to get all the 3 greenhouses together, because I have the scientist that's working with us that's in the greenhouse group that will be putting them up and doing the installation. They're reimbursable grants, so we'll be able to get our money back. But we were trying to do all of this at one time to keep the costs down. You can buy them all at one time, put them all up in a couple of days, but it will help keep our costs down. So the little frustration was by this, not the city kind of like separating out, but it's just that trying to do everything together and working together.
Okay. So then we still would, so with that, we'll still have time, and that would the working group have time to meet in advance of them needing to submit the proper information to complete the application to USDA?
Well, I mean, I would have to ask them to confirm that specifically, but I can say that we can put everything together, and if need be, ask for them to indicate approval through email if it's not possible to hold an actual meeting. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that within a 2-week period.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then again, I think, thank you for providing us with this information, because again, I think, grants is always, a lot of times for grants with the city, it's council, we ratify the grant, right? So, you would do the work, submit it, and then usually Rebecca or someone provides us with a resolution to ratify whatever work is being done, so that we can go forward, apply for the grant, have it go through that process, and so that city council doesn't become an impediment at all in moving some of these ideas forward. Okay, I guess I'll open it up to questions from any members of council. Just looking at my screen here, I will start with Councilwoman Bowers. Do you have any questions regarding the update?
No, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for your presence and for the update this evening. Any way that we can assist, I'm happy to do so.
Vice President Allen.
Yeah, I don't have any particular questions. Thank you also. And I want to echo Councilmember Bowers' sentiments, whatever we can do to make this happen. We've talked often on this council, and Rafika, you've been preaching to the choir for a very long time about the importance of not just, you take it a step further, which I think is so important, the need to provide understanding about where food comes from, how we can grow it, and how people need to understand that. And I think that is such an important component, particularly in our urban setting, for people to understand that. So thank you as always for your efforts to continue to kind of push that out into the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Daniels, do you have any questions and or comments as your chair of Parks and Recreation?
So we're expecting these applications to be done and completed within the next 2 weeks. What's like the time frame for execution of these projects?
I can kind of answer that for you. Last Wednesday, we did go over some the plans from Black and Associates, and I think there was some discrepancies. And I'm just making a statement. If people would pick up a phone call and just ask me, I don't want nobody to assume anything. I don't want nobody to think they thought something, because 9 times out of 10 it doesn't come out that way. You need to know. So as we install the high tunnel, it would not, I'm gonna repeat again, it would not impact any of the plans that you see before you that Black and Associates has given us. Those plans, matter of fact, are not even in stone because we added a high tunnel. It does not do anything to the footprint. It enhances. Matter of fact, on a day like today, we should be able to go up there and get lettuce out of our high tunnel to feed some of our people in our community on a day like today. So we'll be able to grow food pretty much all year round. We already have 175 days to grow outside of a high tunnel, just land-based. But if we have a structure like that, we can almost grow all year round. So there's a lot, we're just asking for the structure. There's other funding that I am putting in place to put it together. Now, this want to share with y'all. Y'all have seen me at the high tunnel in Stilton. Some of y'all on this council, you came, we visited, so you know what kind of structure I'm going for. A lot of y'all asked the question, why don't we have this in Harrisburg? And the reason why is because of some of these things that I've been going through for this past year or so, layer after layer. Well, I'm not sure, that. But I'm pressing forward. We're going to have a state of the art. And that's all Mr. Johnson asked from day one. Can we have something positive, good in our community? Can we have some new stuff in our community that everybody can be proud of? So that's what I'm pushing for. So I just want to let y'all know there's more dollars coming. This is just putting the structure together and also putting the installation. Can we grow in it at that point? Yes, but we will need other things to add to it as well.
So the structure and the installation, when do you think, ideally when will it?
Well, we're waiting for the application to be put in. Like I had mentioned, Councilwoman Daniels, the Y has already submitted theirs. Boys and Girls Club has already submitted theirs. The city seems to have this extra layer here. The goal was to submit all the applications to USDA to get us in the system, because from what I understand, nobody in Harrisburg was taking the dollars. I got a phone call. That's how I got involved and how we got 3 high tunnels. So I said, we'll take 3. The city of Harrisburg will take 3. So I knew where to strategically put them. So the other 2 agencies have already complied for what they wanted. The city, they're talking next, still have a low level of concern because Ms. Deanna was like, just get the paperwork in the system and then we could work out the details. And that's all that I asked. So maybe I'm working a little backwards with the city. I just need guidance, and my guidance is very chopped up or none at all.
So once the money comes in, what's the time frame for the structure?
It would be up to us. We have to do some grading. I'm asking Capital Region Water and the scientist, Paul Westwood, to possibly meet us up there next week, looking at their time frame. I will open that up to anybody that can come in. We would need some grading, and we also talk extensively with Capital Region Water over the years, but even now more extensively about water catchment. What does that look like? What would that entail? What would the water be used for? A goal, we're talking about stormwater management now. Please keep in mind, Council, we have a rain event. When we have a serious rain event, you have 1 million gallons of water that comes out of Reservoir Park. So we're trying to do our best to slow some of that down. People don't realize in that area, putting together an urban farm, putting together certain vegetation, trees, and structures will help reduce the stormwater flow that comes out of that side of the area. So that's also another goal as well. So it's a couple of things of positiveness that we're doing when we're talking about installing a urban agriculture setting there.
And for the edification of anyone who's like listening or watching, can you tell us the difference between a high tunnel and a greenhouse?
Yes, the existing greenhouse that is there now is glass. The high tunnel does not have glass. It has heavy plastic, which is usually about 6 mil or so. I'm looking at somebody to help me if I'm saying wrong. The type of structure that we will get built will be a structure that will be able to hold our snow loads that we have here. So some of the things I'll be learning as well, and also helping to install the high tunnel. I do want to talk to Paul about possibly opening it up. So some residents and community members or persons as yourself that might want to come and participate in the installation and putting it together. So for me, everything is education. The more we educate and keep an educational mode, that's the more that we have, you get more grants for it, you get more support for it. People can walk away and actually apply these things at home. So soon as we get the paperwork in, Councilwoman Daniels, then I will know. I'm looking and praying that we can get started before we get too deep into the harvest season. But if not, hopefully it could be beginning of summer, middle of summer.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Daniels. Councilwoman Green, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions on this project. Thank you to Ms. Rafika for all your hard work and dedication. Thank you for getting the community involved. That's always a big aspect I love that you always do. It's just getting the community involved to teach rather than just doing. That way it continues to go on for generations and generations. So thank you for that. But I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Madsen, any questions?
No questions for me. Thank you for your service, Ms. Mohammed, and looking forward to hearing about the goat soon.
Well, you know what? Councilman Madison, listen, again, give me their approval. I mean, I have the farmer there. There's a whole plan. The plan hasn't went anywhere. But again, having these layers. So that was a whole educational piece. The goats would come in and stay. What would we put them at? Miss Hannah, she has the goats. They're not big goats. That's what they do. But I had talked to Mr. Johnson. I think I came to council and gave y'all a full presentation of how those go. You don't have to pay them. There's no, they'll take off. It's just all kinds of things that we can use. And then not only that, we got fertilizer we can use. I mean, it's a whole closed system. And then we could, you got meat. I know there's some animal lovers, but we got folks. It's a whole system that could pretty much happen there. But mainly the goats were to help us with the vegetation and to help the public works and park directors to maintain our lands. That's what that was for.
I understand. I hope we can reach a compromise one day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. And then President Williams, do you have any questions and/or comments?
No, I don't, Mr. Majors. I just want to concur with the other members. Thank you, Ms. Mohammed, for everything that you've done with that greenhouse and continue to do with that. Thank you for involving the community as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And before we move from this issue, it looks like we do have an attendee with their hand raised, and it looks like it's Zach Monier or Monier. Zach, if you, hold on, let me see if I can, do I have the permission to unmute you? All right, Zach, if you can unmute, I think you may want to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
So I just wanted to have a shot to defend myself from Rafika's report. I don't want the council to think ill of me. I'm not trying to stop her or prevent her from providing food to the members of Harrisburg. I just wanted to clarify a few details related to my involvement and Ron Taylor's involvement. It won't take me too long, I promise. I was initially invited to the Greenhouse Working Group from Ron Taylor as a way to help fund the project as I serve on the Harrisburg Parks Foundation. Ron did to use the greenhouse in order to save the city money. Basically, the city has to buy thousands of dollars of annual flowers from different local growers every year. And Ron wanted to use the greenhouse in order to, instead of buying the flowers from others, just buy the seeds and grow the annuals. So that way the city park revenue they could save some money and not have to spend so much on all of the landscaping for all of the city's many, many parks. So that's where the conversation started for me. After that, we ended up getting over $20,000 worth of labor and materials from a local glaziers union. They replaced every single broken piece of glass on the greenhouse. And so after that point, I was kind of invested in the greenhouse's renovation because we had just received so much generosity from this glaziers union. Around that time, we uncovered the work of Rafika. By we, I mean Ron and myself, learned that Rafika had already done a tremendous amount of work on this greenhouse project. So we invited her to the working group and try and incorporate her designs she had already drafted into the current discussion about the greenhouse. So as we've been working as a working group, we've come to the realization that it may be indeed cheaper just to tear down the old greenhouse and build a new one. And we don't mean to stop that idea. It's just, I'm still kind of tied to the generosity of the Glaziers Union. And again, the whole reason the city got involved in this in the first place, from my understanding, was because they wanted to use the greenhouse as a way to help reduce their costs of park maintenance. If the community and the working group decide that they no longer think that's the best option or use for the space, I will gladly change my tune and support what the group decides. But I just want the council to understand this is very many voices working together on this project. There are at least 7 different groups that are working within this working group. And there are over 80 different people that are on the emails. So we don't mean to slow Rafika down by any means. And the Harrisburg Parks Foundation is definitely willing to write the checks to make these projects happen. We've obtained over $50,000 worth of money to make it happen. So I just want to kind of defend and address some of the potential miscommunications that was laid down in Rafika's original report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Okay, Ms. Mohammed, guess we'll let you comment, but I think first, before we do that, I guess as I think we all know on the call, Mr. Johnson is no longer with the city, so we are, I think the working group and where they intend to go, those plans will be worked out through the working group and all the other agencies that are and small groups that are working together to figure out what will be the new and best use. I do recall when there was some, when, as Zach mentioned, the grant, excuse me, not the grant, but the generous donation from the Glaziers to and some of the community groups to redo the panels at the greenhouse. And again, I think if we're all working together to figure out how to move this forward, that'll be in the best interest of the city and its residents. So don't want to belabor this too long, but Ms. Mohammed, you may have something to say, or are you?
No, I just wanted to say one thing, and he's correct. The Glazers did come, and I just wanted to share. I fought that tooth and nail. I did not want the Glazers to put that kind of money in there and those resources. There were some other things that were said that I needed to do, but I fought that whole piece tooth and nail. Yes, Ron took my exact plans, documents, diagrams, and everything, and brought it to this working group with a whole different idea. They never knew anything about growing food in my initial part. So when I came back to the meetings, and Ron did not invite me to the meetings, Mr. Johnson did, said that I needed to come back to the meetings. And then that's when I found out that there was this whole other piece going on. So I just wanted just to correct that. And I apologize that people were led in a different direction, but that was never the initial plan. It was always to grow food and feed our community. So that's all I wanted to say. And thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I'll be following up with Chair Daniels, Chris, and others on the working group on how we can move forward with this. Because again, I think there's 2 pieces there. There's the I guess I'll call the historic greenhouse, and then the proposal that is looking at with the high tunnel, as well as some of the additional improvements to that area. So is there anything else further? We will move on with the other work of the Public Works Committee. And I want to thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for your time. Thanks, Chris, and Zach, and everyone else that's involved in that working group. Okay. Let's see here. Sorry. Next, we have Resolution 6 of 2021, and I guess, Kirk, could you read that into the record?
Yeah, Resolution 6 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a sidewalk maintenance agreement with Pennsylvania Department of Transportation concerning certain sidewalks being constructed as part of the I-83 East Shore Section 3 project.
Thanks, and looks like Wayne's here, so I'm going to turn it over to Wayne to give a brief description of the resolution.
Thank you, Chairman Majors, City Council members. I think this is more of a formality. It's the traditional obligation of municipalities to see that sidewalks within the state right-of-way are safe for pedestrian traffic, and the city has a number of ordinances that require property owners to maintain sidewalks throughout the city, snow removal, repair cracks, things like that. So what PennDOT does when they do major projects like this is you'll notice that there's quite a bit of sidewalk being constructed along state right-of-way, but there's also sidewalk being constructed on city right-of-way as well, which are not part of this agreement. So all the Commonwealth is looking for is this maintenance agreement that the city will enforce, either maintain or enforce the maintenance of the sidewalks that they're going to construct. There's 5 sections of sidewalk covered in this. There is a map. I apologize for it. It looks like on the public image on the website, it's a little bit hard to read. You have to zoom in quite a bit, but it would be Cameron Street, more or less from Paxton Street down past Sycamore in the south, Paxton Street, 13th to 17th, and then another section up at 19th Street from Greenwood south to 19th Street. I'm sorry, south to Paxton Street. The 13th Street section would just be the bridge over 83, and then 29th would be 29th to Derry. That section of sidewalk on the west side. The east side would be another municipality. So those would be the sections of sidewalk that are covered under this agreement. And so, like I mentioned, the city would either have to agree to maintain those. So those would be, 19th over 83. We would have to maintain. The city would, because there's no property owner to require to maintain, but other sections would be under our existing ordinances, the property owner's obligation to maintain. So with that, I can answer any questions about the agreement.
Excuse me. Thank you, Wayne. And I think you made the only point that I was going to make in terms of this as of right now before I open up the question, which was that if there's any according to our city ordinance, that the property owner that abuts that sidewalk is required to maintain the sidewalk. We get a lot of questions, at least I have, about the maintenance of sidewalks throughout the city of Harrisburg, and those remain, according to the city ordinance, the obligation of the property owner. So if you're a renter, it would be your landlord. If you're the homeowner, you are responsible for maintaining that sidewalk. So I will open it up now to any questions. I'm seeing that I'll just open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, please, feel free to chime in. If not, we can move on to the next resolution, since this is because of the nature of the resolution. Let's do a quick round robin. President Williams?
Yes, I want to make a comment. Wayne, I just want to be reassured that the business owners along that particular track will not be affected by the retaining walls that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania puts up. During the work on Cameron Street, they put up retaining walls, And what happened is all the water went into the property owner's business. And so what they had to come back out and do the whole sidewalk and street over again. So could you just keep an eye on, make sure that you follow up with them to make sure that that doesn't happen this time? Because I received a lot of complaints over and over about water when it rains or when it snowed. The melted rain, or I mean melted snow and rain would come into the buildings. It would get about 2 feet high. It was pretty high.
I will I will look for that as the plans are developed for the project.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Because I know they're going to do a retaining wall for the motor vehicles traveling in that vicinity, but I also want them to make sure that they do, when they do it, the sidewalks and everything, that they do a retaining wall, that water doesn't go into the business along that area.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Bowers, any questions?
I did have one relative to the term, but I don't know if that's just, so it's on page, well, it's section 5 is the term and termination. Under subsection A, it notes that this agreement shall continue in full force and effect indefinitely unless terminated as provided in this agreement. The effective date of this agreement shall be the date of this agreement, the date this agreement is fully executed by the municipality and PennDOT, and all approvals required by Commonwealth contracting procedures have been obtained as indicated by the date of the last Commonwealth signature. I was just curious, I guess in working with PennDOT previously, what is their timeline in obtaining all of their necessary signatures and other procedural?
So my colleagues at PennDOT are going to be upset that I don't know this off the top of my head, but we typically get these back in say 60 or 90 days. It goes through various offices, Office of Budget, PennDOT, Chief Counsel's office. So I want to say within 90 days we should have this back. But in actuality, some of these sidewalks, like for instance, Paxton under ID3, they don't even exist today. So we wouldn't really have any obligation to maintain something that doesn't exist. And for the existing sidewalks, say, 19th Street over ID3, we're our Public Works Department's currently maintaining those sections right now. So this will just be newer sections because it'll be and a little bit longer, obviously, because of the widening. But I would say 60 to 90 days. Once we provide them with the signed copies, we should get those back.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Allett. You're good. You're muted. You good?
Yeah, sorry, my mouse wasn't picking it up. No, I'm good. Thank you. No questions.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Madsen, any questions, comments?
No questions for me, thanks.
All right. Councilwoman Green.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. And Councilwoman Daniels, any questions and/or comments?
Yeah, this is just for my understanding. So when PennDOT does repair a sidewalk, such as in this context, and then we're maintaining it, we're not transferring, are we transferring title to them, or are we just keeping an easement, or what's the property interest looking like?
So it will still be within state right of way. So, the city, it's a traditional obligation of a municipality to make sure that sidewalks are safe for pedestrian travel. So PennDOT makes sure that, let's take Dairy Street, for example, a state route. PennDOT will make sure that Dairy Street is plowed, that the potholes are taken care of, that the road's marked accordingly. And then it is the municipality's obligation to make sure that the sidewalks are safe for travel. So if that means our codes department is out citing a property owner for not shoveling their sidewalk, or if it's my department citing the owner for having broken slabs in a dangerous condition, a tripping hazard as such, that's municipalities' traditional obligation. So what PennDOT does with all municipalities is they ask for executing of an agreement such as this that acknowledges that it's the municipality's obligation, and PennDOT wouldn't then dedicate resources to maintain. They can't, like, they just don't have legislative funding to maintain sidewalks. So PennDOT will defer to the municipalities. We just a good example was an interesting example would be a park bench on Walnut Street in front of the Commonwealth, right? So you have Commonwealth owned property, the state, Commonwealth grounds, and then you have a state route, and somehow the municipality had approved the installation of a bench right there on Walnut Street, because they do defer to us on sidewalk usage and obstruction. So I don't want to say that it's going to become, city property or anything. It's going to be public right away with us having an obligation to ensure it's safe for pedestrian travel.
Okay. And then I noticed there's language of reimbursement. Is there what's being reimbursed if PennDOT is doing the construction?
There is a reimbursement grant. That's the next legislation. Is there language?
Oh, maybe I opened the wrong. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, that's it for me then.
Okay, thank you. And if there aren't any further questions from anyone, I will ask that resolution, make sure I have the right number. That resolution 6 of 2021 be placed on for a vote at our next legislative session. Thank you. And then next we will move to resolution 7. Kurt, would you mind reading that into the record?
Yes, resolution 7 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a reimbursement and maintenance agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to construct improvements in the state corridor, and authorizing the designation of the city engineer as the sole signatory of the agreement.
All right, thank you. And again, I'll turn it over to Wayne for a brief explanation of the resolution.
Thank you again. So this is the long-awaited reimbursement grant for the State Street Rapid Response Project. Couple things to note: the reimbursement is for $450,000. It was there was a $500,000 commitment. For ease, there was also a commitment by the city to reimburse PennDOT $50,000 for her street. So we had issued a purchase order. There was no reimbursement agreement drafted. Instead of drafting 2 reimbursement agreements, we just lessened the amount that we were going to receive from PennDOT to offset that her street underpass project, which should start here within a couple of weeks, March, I think the second week of March. So it's 450, not the original 500,000 that we had earlier reported. And so this is, essentially a road diet on State Street, pedestrian refuge areas, additional sidewalks, line painting, high visibility crosswalks, narrowed driving lanes, and all the safety improvements that we were allowed to do, keeping in mind the original design that was prepared by that workshop meeting that took place during the State Street Rapid Response Project, the stakeholder groups and citizens and everyone else. There are some draft plans attached to the agreement, so you can see some of the proposed improvements, but perhaps it'd be better if I just answered any questions, since I know most of you are familiar with the proposed changes.
Okay. Yeah, I will start with questions, and since I think Councilwoman Daniels was referring to this one towards the end, I will start with her. Councilwoman Daniels, do you have any questions on Resolution 7?
Yeah, basically the same question. Can you,
So this is a reimbursement agreement. There's in our capital budget monies budgeted for this project. It will be delivered through the PennDOT ECMS format, delivery methods similar to how we delivered the Riverwalk and Her Street accessible route projects last year, or maybe it was the year before. Time flies. So it'll be electronic invoicing. The city will receive the invoice, pay for it, and then within certain period of time, we get wired the funds from PennDOT. So it's usually within 30 days. It's actually pretty fast.
so it's dependent on our invoicing then. And then once we do, their period is 30 days for reimbursement.
Right. So I'll have to look at the specifics of this particular agreement. This one's a little bit different than the Riverwalk in that it's a paper reimbursement agreement as opposed to using the Commonwealth's RAS system. But normally the reimbursement occurs immediately upon the city approving the funds, and then we have 30 days to we actually have 30 days to pay the vendor upon receipt is really how it's written. So if this one's a little bit different, it would be memorialized in the agreement in front of you. But like I said, it's usually pretty cooperative. Like the city would approve. So contractor would invoice, submit an invoice through the system. Both PennDOT and the city, myself, a number of PennDOT officials will look at that invoice, make sure that work is done. We also have a full-time construction inspector. We will have a full-time construction inspector on the project that makes sure that the work is done. Everyone approves that. And then once everyone approves it, the city releases the invoice amount to the vendor, low bid contractor, and PennDOT initiates the reimbursement to the city. So it's in my experience, it's happened almost simultaneously. There's been times where we've gotten paid before we actually committed, paid the contractor because it's wired funds. And there's times that it happens the other way around. So it's pretty seamless. I know on the 7th Street widening before my time, the city had to wait to get funds because of cash flow issues, but that was a unique situation. We definitely have the money in the project fund for the full amount of the project.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here, I will next go to Councilman Madsen. Any questions and or comments on Resolution 7?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Bowers, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Wayne, you indicated that you're going to narrow the driving lanes. Plus, you're going to include bicycle lanes, and you're going to upgrade both sides of the street sidewalks, or just one side?
The sidewalks would not be wide. And there's a number of ADA ramps on the project that'll be replaced. So the cartway configuration will be there'll be a bicycle lane next to the curb, and then there'll be parking blocks that buffer that bike lane. Then there'll be 2 travel lanes and a turn lane. The outside travel lanes will function as parking lanes during 23 hours of the day.
Okay.
There'll be the same parking restriction that's in place when you go beyond the city limits in the borough will be in place in the city. So leaving the city in the PM, there'll be parking restriction on the eastbound right lane, and then AM there'll be parking restriction for that 1 hour coming into the city.
So we still will maintain both sides parking?
Yeah, 20, well, I should say 22 hours a day, there'll be no parking restrictions on the corridor. 1 hour in the AM, there'll be a restriction on the westbound travel, and 1 hour in the PM, there'll be a restriction on the eastbound travel.
So will that not reduce parking spaces in that vicinity?
So the project adds some parking space. Yes, for that 1 hour, there would be. The project does add some parking spaces. Well, formally adds. We did identify some parking spaces on Juniper Street where we would mark, they're going to get marked as part of this project. We've had conversations with Department of General Services about the lot off 13th Street there at State Street that's owned by DGS, and allowing city residents to park there during those restricted hours. And we also have some legislation coming that would allow if city council approves, would allow city council to restrict parking for residents only. We found it interesting that a lot of the parking is actually taken up by businesses in the area and employees and such. I think one of the charter school there takes up about at least a dozen spaces, on-street parking spaces during the day. And if they're going to remain in existence, it seems to make sense that they utilize maybe school district parking facilities instead of on-street traditionally residential spaces.
Okay. How are you going to alleviate the congestion that's going to occur when you have the beginning of the work that's being done on State Street?
You mean during construction?
Yes, during the construction period. How are you going to alleviate because that street is highly traveled, incoming and outgoing.
So there will be special provisions in the. This is one of the hurdles we had to accomplish with PennDOT in order to do this, was maintain, obviously maintaining traffic flows. And there are special provisions for traffic control in the contract documents that'll go out for bid here in April, or actually, March, April timeframe, that will restrict construction during certain periods of the day. So that's basically what's being done. It's a very, very wide corridor. So, you can envision a situation where a contractor utilizes like that center lane to shift traffic using barricades and stuff. I mean, the good part about this project is we're following all of PennDOT's guidelines, no ifs, ands, or buts. So, there's not a lot of leeway in this project on how a contractor does his or her work.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Green, any questions on this proposal?
No, I don't have any questions on this proposal. Thank you.
Okay. And I think, Wayne, you answered one of my questions, but just again, so in terms of timing, should this go through construction, looking to begin, you said March, April for bid?
So I have in my notes, April 22nd is the let date, but I'm assuming that language, PennDOT means the award date, but I could be wrong. But July 19th is the notice to proceed date. So that's the date everyone should really focus on, is that July 19th start of construction date.
Okay. Okay. Sorry there, got a crying baby. And then in terms of the MWBE participation goals are based on PennDOT, correct?
They will be based on PennDOT's diversity study. As soon as I get that from the state contracting office, I can share that information on what their goals will be.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and if you could share that, that'd be appreciated. And do you have any timing on when you can expect that information?
I can ask it as soon as tomorrow. I know that it's with contracting right now. I mean, we're 90% done. I think the only thing the city has left to do is obtain the utility clearances from the utilities, and we're and obviously get this agreement executed.
Okay.
So it should be any day. And actually, they'll probably already know the answer because it's probably similar to other projects let in Harrisburg.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, now if you can get that, that'd be appreciated. And lastly, just any last alibis, any questions, comments from anyone?
One more, Mr. Martin, you had stated that the city reimbursed PennDOT for the Hurst Street project. What all have they done during that project?
So we have not reimbursed them. We had agreed to reimburse them. And we
Okay.
executed a purchase order. They completed their design, and the project was awarded to Hemp Brothers, and they will start construction March. I thought it was March 6th, but maybe my memory. So they'll do some. They'll obviously be resurfacing the road. They'll rebuild sidewalks and curbs. They'll install a conduit for the city's traffic signal interconnect, and they'll do some limited painting of the Norfolk Southern structure.
Okay.
What that entails is still unsettled matter. They're not going to anything that's always wet, like an abutment. They probably will not be able to paint because the paint just literally won't stick. So, and also they don't want to sandblast too much and take away some of the steel on some of those columns. Now, through the process, Norfolk Southern has been guilted into making some improvements or repairs, the extent of which I'm not 100% sure of. I don't even know if Norfolk Southern knows yet, but it does seem like Norfolk Southern is coming to the table to do some repairs to that
So
structure.
our reimbursement is for the sidewalks.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically all we had. The work to the sidewalks and curbs are far more than the amount of money that we agreed to contribute.
Well, it's
So
greatly needed. The sidewalks are bad. It's great.
Oh yeah. And then, well, also when we had agreed to improve the lighting, and so I don't know if anybody noticed, but we did replace all the lighting under there and added some additional lighting, which will be a lot better once the walls are painted and the sidewalks are new and the drainage, and we can walk under there without getting splashed by water and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you, Mr. Majors.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing or hearing no further questions, I'd ask that we place Resolution 7 of 2021 on the agenda for our next legislative session. And with that, that concludes the work of the Public Works Committee, and I will turn it back over to you, President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. And now we'll turn it over to Community and Economic Development Committee, Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, President Williams. The Community and Economic Development Committee will be discussing Resolution 10. Mr. Petrosky, could you read the resolution into the minutes, please?
Yeah, Resolution 10 of 2021 is a resolution approving the preliminary final subdivision plan to subdivide the property at 1315 North 6th Street into 3 separate parcels in order to accommodate each of the 2 existing buildings, the Jackson and Lick Towers, and the new multi-story apartment dwelling.
Okay, thank you. Is someone from the administration available to present the land development plan?
Yes, Councilman Mattson, Jeffrey Knight, I'm here to present the plan.
Thank you.
I believe I saw both William Pompey with K&W Engineers and Saint-Gourmand's with the Harrisburg Housing Association on as well. So they should be able to provide a little bit more depth after I do the introduction here. So the application before City Council tonight is, as Mr. Petrosky noted, a subdivision of the existing property at 1315 North 6th Street, on which the Jackson and Lick Towers both sit. The subdivision will create individual parcels for each of the 2 buildings that are there now, and for an eventual 50-unit multifamily dwelling that will be located in the southwest corner of the property, right across 6th Street from the Broad Street Market. And so as part of the subdivision proposal, the applicants, the density of the two parcels on which the Jackson and Lick Towers would be situated was also going to increase, and it was already out of conformance with the zoning code. So concurrent with this application, they also filed a zoning relief application to expand an existing non-conforming aspect of the property. They did get approval from the zoning hearing board at the February 4th meeting. So they do have zoning approval to move forward with the project as is. As noted, there's not going to be really much change to the two parcels on which the Jackson and Lick Towers sit. There won't be really any change, I don't think. There may be some small access changes to provide access to the new parcel, but otherwise those should remain largely the same. And then the new parcel in that southwest corner there, as noted, will accommodate a 50 unit, about, I believe, 4 or 5 story multifamily dwelling in the future. They designed the size of the parcel, the subdivision, to be large enough to accommodate the 50 units by right. So I don't believe, and presuming that the development is in conformance with the development standards of the zoning code, I don't think there will be any zoning relief necessary for that new development. But otherwise, the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended that City Council approve the request with the following conditions. The applicant will receive approval from the Zoning Hearing Board for the associated special exception application required to enable the project to move forward. And as I just noted, they received that on February 4th. The applicant will provide cross easement access agreements for the 3 lots, as noted in the Dauphin County Planning Commission's review. So right now, there are 2 egress access points onto 6th Street and 1 onto Basin Street. And so now, but it's all serving one property. So now that there will be multiple parcels, Dauphin County Planning Commission is recommending that they just have easements for access through those parcels for each of the unique parcels. And then finally, the applicant will address the city engineer's comments prior to the submission of a land development plan for proposed development of the 50-unit apartment building. And I believe that mainly addressed the existing vehicular access that's way in the southwest corner near the Ben Franklin School. It's chained off right now, so it's not really functional, but eventually they'll be closing that off entirely. And so the city engineer's comments were largely related to making sure that that sidewalk is eventually reconstructed in a manner that's ADA compliant. And then the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended the request be approved for the following reasons. The proposed project will establish individual parcels accommodating each of the 2 existing buildings on Lot 2 and Lot 3, as well as the proposed apartment building on Lot 1 to allow better management of the subject properties. Then the proposal will help implement the development of a new 50-unit multifamily dwelling on site dedicated to providing affordable housing units in demand both in the neighborhood and throughout the city. The Planning Bureau thinks this is a sensible application. It makes sense from a property management perspective for HHA. And again, if it helps to make an eventual affordable housing development go through a much smoother process, we're all in favor of it. So with that, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you for that. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
We are, Councilman Mattson.
Hi. Good evening. Could you state your names for the record, please?
Sure. I'm Sinwar Mans. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with the Harrisburg Housing Authority. And also present is Erwin Aronson, who is General Counsel to the Harrisburg Housing Authority. We have some other individuals that are, I guess, fearful of showing their faces, but if need be, we can call them up.
When my face is shown, everyone else looks wonderful, I promise, in comparison.
Do you have anything to add in addition to Mr. Knight's presentation?
I'll add something briefly, and then Mr. Aronson can provide a little bit more color as well. There may be a curiosity as to why we're doing what we're doing, the way we're doing it. And part of the origination of this request came from a grant that we received from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh. They had granted us roughly $500,000, and this was about 5 years ago. And as a part of that grant award, they have a number of different conditions that they require. One condition was that we would establish a retainage agreement between the Housing Authority and the Federal Home Loan Bank. That retainage agreement would have certain conditions that spoke in a language of sort of lien or encumbrance, even though it wasn't quite that. But what we found out was the entirety of the parcel in which Jackson and Lick sit is one parcel only. And so if there would be a retainage agreement that was recorded and attached to Jackson Tower at the time, which was receiving the money for the vast improvements that we had made, it would actually, unfortunately, would attach to both properties. Nobody wanted that. And HUD specifically did not want that. And so as a part of HUD giving us approval to enter into this retainage agreement with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh, they required us to subdivide the two communities, which we ultimately said we will do in due time. Subsequent to that, we had worked with our co-developer, MVAH, to design, which is still in its preliminary phase, but to design a building that would sit in front of Lick Tower as a 4 to 5 story. It's right now a 5-story building at 50 apartments, general occupancy, low income or affordable income. So it would be 20%, 50%, 60% of the area median income families. And so in order to do this, we actually needed to subdivide once again if we were going to move forward. And so the thinking was in order to build in some economies of scale and do this together, as opposed to cutting the property in half, Lick and Jackson, and then coming back for a second time to then cut Lick in some portion, that parcel, we determined that it would be better to come before the council right now and do that. And so that's kind of where we are. The Mr. Barber is with MVAH. He's their senior vice president. He just came on. I guess I convinced him that he needed to he needed to toughen up, get on, show his face. So anyway,
figure out how to turn the video on. I apologize.
Oh, you didn't know how to turn your video? Yeah. Okay. So with that, I'll pass along just to Mr. Aronson, maybe some additional details that he wanted to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Manns, Chairman Mattson, President Williams, council members, Mr. Knight, Mr. Grover, who I see is out there but hiding behind the screen, and Mr. Barber, thank you for revealing yourself. As Mr. Manns has indicated, I'm here this evening in my capacity as counsel to the Harrisburg Housing Authority. I think Mr. Manns has really set the table and laid out why we are here this evening. There are two salient points that I would like to make just as a minor supplement to Mr. Mann's presentation. One is that in the immediate sense, for all practical purposes, the city will recognize no change on that single parcel now when we subdivide it as we have proposed. The Jackson building will be there, the Lick building will be there, the parking will be there, the occupancy will not change. It is really necessary because of the nature of the Housing Authority's unique relationship with HUD. We are party to annual contracts with HUD that effectively assure that HUD's interest is protected in all of the real estate that the Harrisburg Housing Authority operates in its capacity as the largest single residential housing operator in the city. And that gives them the right, and they have exercised that right, to have the Housing Authority execute deeds of trust for the benefit of HUD, making HUD effectively, for academic conversational purposes, a lien holder, a primary lien holder ahead of everyone else. And when, as Mr. Manns has described, we received the grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, HUD wanted to be sure that its primacy was not compromised. And its primacy is with respect to the lot as well as the Jackson and Lick buildings. So by having to give the Federal Home Loan Bank Board what is in effect in the nature of a lien or an encumbrance on the property, because historically the wonderful people who started this project back in 1959, actually, and it came to fruition in 60 and 61. When I say this project, I don't mean this community, I mean this construction project that has resulted in what are now known as the Jackson and Lick Towers. They saw no need to subdivide it because they were being built in tandem. Now, with the passage of time, there is a need for us to be able to protect our housing authority's interest and HUD's interest and the Federal Home Loan Bank Board's interest in relative terms to handle this way. The other piece of this puzzle is, and the second point I wanted to make, as Mr. Manns has alluded, we have a future development plan that will involve what is now very much in its infancy and quite preliminary, a 5-story building with 50 units and underground parking that will actually add parking to the site, not subtract from it. For the future, we will be back to all of the city oversight appropriate authorities when and in the event we reach the point of going from preliminary plans to planning on putting shovels in the ground. But for now, that is a plan and not more. So we wanted to bring to council's attention, as well as to the staff that are involved, the practical point that we're not ready for that second piece. But as Mr. Manns has indicated, through the use of your time now and our drawings now, we can be prepared for that in the future as that eventuality comes to fruition, both as a development project and as a project that is capable of being funded appropriately. Beyond that, shockingly as it is to the council that is familiar with me, I have nothing else to say. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Barber if he has something he wishes to add.
I appreciate that. I have nothing to add. I think what everyone has described is accurate, and we're doing a little bit of house cleaning and planning for the future here, and so we wanted to be forthcoming and bring it all to you in one shot.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Nothing else.
That'll be all
from our team, I don't believe.
We'll take any questions.
Yeah, a few questions. Well, I'm glad you touched on the parking. As you know, is that area that could be a sensitive topic. So I'm glad to hear that that's being addressed in the plan. Is there any plans for outreach for local workforce or MWBE participation?
There will be, as Mr. Aronson pointed out, we haven't even gone through the complete design phase yet, and so that's putting our skis before, putting ourselves before our skis, but certainly we will. We understand the significance of that issue. We understand the importance of it. It's important to us as well, but we haven't gone through the formality of that process yet.
And do note, historically, the Harrisburg Housing Authority never engages in these kinds of construction undertakings and projects without addressing that issue. It's first and foremost in our solicitation minds in every single activity we undertake.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't have any other additional questions outside of, while I have you here, what is the current waiting list for affordable housing in the city as it stands? I think the last I saw, it was roughly around 1,000 households or families. Do we have an updated number on that?
Yeah, that's a different bucket than what public housing or low income housing is in terms of the waiting list. I could give you waiting list numbers as it relates to low income housing as opposed to maybe affordable housing, which is more in the 50 to 60% area median income range. What I can tell you is for this particular project, and for most low income housing tax credit projects, you you commission a market study. And that market study then tells you whether or not there's a demand for the product that you're going to put out there, for the housing that you're going to provide. And as you know, Councilman Mattson, the city, as well as the Housing Authority and the Redevelopment Authority, we commissioned a housing study a couple of years ago. That housing study revealed, I think to many people's surprise, not mine, I know I'm biased, but not mine, that there is a scarcity of quality affordable housing in the city. And that's really where the demand is strongest, which is so heartening to see the work that's being done, especially by Councilwoman Bowers and her committee with the affordable housing provisions, the incentivizing of affordable housing. That speaks to that study, I believe, in many ways. And so the demand, we believe, is still strong. The market rate study that we did, or the market study rather that we did, showed that the capture rate would be significant for us, which is what we look for, that we would capture a nice size percentage because of that demand. And so if the market study doesn't show a demand, we don't do the project, and quite frankly, PHFA wouldn't give us credits because the market study shows otherwise. And so I know that doesn't give you a hard number, but we can tell you through our own study that there is a demand for this affordable housing, as I think all the council members know.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, it's just offhand if you had the figure. That's it for me. I will open it up to questions from my colleagues, and I will operate as if we were on the dais. So I will kick it to you, Councilwoman Bowers. Any questions?
Thank you. No, I was trying to find a clear answer to your question. There are some numbers shared in the draft of the comprehensive plan. Chapter 3 discusses housing. In response to Mr. Manns, yes, this legislative package is a direct result or hopeful solution to the 2018 Harrisburg Housing Demand Study that was conducted and yielded one primary objective, that over the next 5 years at that time, there was a significant need of affordable housing in every area of the city. So I guess to answer your question, Councilman Mattson, I would refer you to Chapter 3 of the comprehensive plan, where various numbers and charts are shared in the
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that section. I just didn't know with the realities of COVID and the economic, if we had any current numbers, or since there's been so much change in the past year. But thank you for that. I will look at that. Thank you.
Councilman Mattson, this is Trey Barber we work with the Housing Authority on this proposed development. And we did, before we started to get too far down the road, even though we're still at the very beginning, we did commission a market study to understand that need. And I was pulling up the documentation as Mr. Manns was talking and you were talking. But the market study in our primary market area that we're looking, which is essentially from the river out towards Colonial Park, they kind of do a big circle of what you can capture. And just in that, for those that would qualify as of when this market study was completed in, I think, January or February of this year, there were over 25,000 people that would qualify for this affordable housing development that's there. Now, as Mr. Manns pointed out, that is, we're looking to serve 20%, 50%, and 60% of the area median income, and all of those in between there. And so, based on that, we're getting a very small piece. This 50-unit project is such a small piece of the need that's there, of over 25,000 people that would qualify, sort of within the 5-6 mile radius that we have of this development.
Thank you. And to Mr. Manns' points, it attests to the work that's being done through the Building and Housing Committee. So appreciate that. Next, we'll give it to Councilwoman Green.
I don't have any questions on this project. I've had the opportunity to ask some of the questions during planning phase. So I look forward to seeing the project come to fruition. And just thank you for your hard work and effort and dedication to bringing affordable housing to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Well, I'm certainly delighted to see this project moving forward. Mr. Mans, you and I were discussing this last year sometime.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you again, as well as I concur with Ms. Green that you're providing additional and affordable housing for our residents of the city of Harrisburg. Now, one thing I want to ask you though, because now you have the Lick building and it's named after Alton Lick, and then you have the Jackson Tower that's named after C. Sylvester Jackson. So I'm just curious what you're going to name this project.
That remains to be seen or determined. Okay. Right now, it's a very generic 6th Street Loft is all that it's called right now, and that's just a placeholder name. I don't even know how to answer the question because we haven't even gone down the road to.
I just thought I'd ask that to you since I see that. Thank you very, very much. Again,
you're welcome.
I'm glad.
I'm confident that the Harrisburg Housing Authority's Board of Commissioners will take under advisement any suggestion that anyone brings to them.
Okay, you can name it the Wanda Tower, Mr. Mayor.
The Wanda Tower.
Thank you.
Very good.
That's all I have, Mr. Mattson.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Williams. Vice President Allen.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions, number one, but thank you for addressing affordable housing. And number two, also in that area, thank you for addressing parking. I realize that is not always a requirement, but it is much appreciated when you put that into the plan, and particularly in that area, because I know it's going to continue to be a challenge. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Majors.
Thank you. The only question I have on this, since it's just a preliminary for the division, is how does this have any impact or will have any impact on access to the lake pool?
There are no plans to change that access. The right of way that the city still has to gain access to that pool is not going to change. I think that may have even been referenced in the zoning board plan that we had submitted to the zoning board. So no, that's not contemplated at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
All right. No, thank you. And no further questions on this proposal. Look forward to hearing from you all in the future as plans continue to develop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels?
No, already asked.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. One last chance for any questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, we will put this up for approval at our next legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, council members. We appreciate you giving us your time tonight. And good to see everyone hale and hearty.
Okay, thank you. Go.
And that'll conclude the business for the Community and Economic Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. We will now move on to the Parks and Recreation Committee. Ms. Daniels.
So, Mr. Petrosky, could you read Resolution 11, 2021 into the record, please?
Sure. Resolution 11 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to award funding in an amount not to exceed $30,000 to the Capital Area Greenbelt Association for the performance and maintenance on city-owned land in the Capital Area Greenbelt.
And who is presenting for the city?
That would be me. There are a few other people here as well for the same thing if need be.
Okay, do you mind going ahead and giving us a summary?
Sure. This is the same grant that the city has entered, provided, I should say, from the host fee to the Capital Area Greenbelt Association for activities that they complete, such as controlling and removing invasive species around the Greenbelt, as well as control and removal of debris from the creek. And we have Scott Shepler from Capital Area Greenbelt here to speak more about the activities that they perform with that funding.
Yes, Council, thank you for the opportunity to receive these funds. You may or may not know that the city-owned properties of the capital area Greenbelt that are primarily outside of the city are maintained by the Greenbelt Association. And we're in the middle of a restoration of the Paxton Parkway. And as a result, we've signed landowner agreement. The city and the Greenbelt Association has signed landowner agreements to perform certain maintenance functions, which we are unable as a volunteer organization to do. It is not legal for us to apply herbicides in a public park. So this money goes to maintaining the vegetation, eliminating invasive species, and like Chris said, to keep log jams out of the stream.
Are there any changes between this year's contract and previous contracts?
Now, this would be the third time that we've done this, and it's pretty much exactly the same.
And do you mind reminding me the $10,000 match? Is that in actual funds, or is that in labor and materials?
That's cash.
And the other, so for just our general edification, has the work that you all have been doing under this contract, how did COVID affect your ability to deliver on the services?
Last year, the money wasn't available to us until July 1st. At that point, we were pretty far in, and there was a period of time when the invasive control contractors, land studies, when they were unable to perform, but that changed. They were designated as a critical function, if you will, and we proceeded with the treatments along the parkway. One of the things that we focused on removing are the ailanthus or tree of heaven on both parkways. These are the trees that attract the spotted lanternfly, which is now invading our community.
And just as a refresher, this might be for Ms. Baldock, if she's still there. But we entered this contract as a professional services kind of contract, right? That's the process that we use.
Councilwoman Daniels, this is Deputy Solicitor Gaylord. This is actually from the city, a grant award to CACA, not a professional services agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for me. I'll start. I'll go in the order that we're sitting. Councilman Majors.
No, thank you. No questions, but thank you for all the work that the Greenbelt Association does. And just on a personal side, Mr. Shepler, I do owe you a call, so I'll be reaching out soon on a couple things.
I know you're a busy guy. Thank you very much.
And Vice President Allen.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
And President Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Shepard, can you give us an accounting of how these funds will be allocated?
Yes. In the same manner they were allocated last year, which was, there's if you combine the Greenbelt's $10,000 and the city's 30, we have a pool of 40.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to plan to allocate 10,000 to debris removal again, and 30,000 to the invasive species control.
Okay. Now, would this be a yearly maintenance that you will be doing to the Greenbelt?
Yes, very much. It is a maintenance need, and it's really to abide by the landowner agreements that we signed with DEP.
Right.
When we got pretty much like $500,000 to do restoration work. We are now obligated to find a way to do that work.
Well, thank you. It looks very nice. I've been out there, and I appreciate all your hard work. That's all. Thank you, Ms. Daniels.
Councilman Matson?
No questions for me, thank you.
I'm forgetting the order. I think it's Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Shepler, for being here tonight and for all of your work and maintenance with the Greenbelt.
And Councilwoman Green.
No, I don't have any questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask my colleagues to support this bill when it does come forward for a vote, and I would like to add this to the next legislative agenda. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepler, again.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Alec.
Thank you. Up for discussion tonight in Budget and Finance is Resolution 12 of 2021. Kirk, would you mind reading that into record?
Sure. Resolution 12 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a collective agreement with the Harrisburg School District for the collection of the business privilege and mercantile tax and the amusement tax for 2021 tax year.
Great, thank you. Who from the administration wants to discuss? I know this is an annual event, so who wants to just give us a quick overview from the administration?
Yeah, Mike Hughes, Tax Administrator. Good evening. Give you a quick overview. It's really, as Neil had stated, the mayor has been in discussion, negotiation with the school district and the receiver team, and this was one of the items he was involved in. This is, I believe, the 20th year that we've renewed a contract with the school district to do this collection of the business privilege mercantile and amusement tax for them. And on this particular contract, the only change is the collection rate now at 4%.
And that's the rate that we're imposing.
Last year, we were at 5%. The new contract goes down to 4%.
And is that a change that we're recommending, or is this just how did that come about?
That came about with the mayor negotiating with the school district and the receiver team.
Okay. Very good. I know since it's an annual event, I don't have any particular questions, but I will jump through my colleagues on council. We'll start with the end of the dais, going with Councilmember Green.
Councilmember who?
Councilmember Green, are you there, Asha?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, now we can.
All right. No, I don't have any questions about this legislation. It's pretty much a formality. So no questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowers.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Matson.
No questions for me, thank you.
Council President.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Majors.
No questions.
And Councilmember Daniels.
No questions.
All right, well, hearing that no additional questions on this, we'll go ahead and move this for the agenda for next week's legislative session, and I will turn it back to you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Alec. We now will move forward with Public Safety Committee. Ms. Green.
Thank you, President Williams. Mr. Petrowski, could you read Resolution 13 into record, please?
Sure. Resolution 13 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with Public Safety Assessments LLC for the purpose of providing required psychological testing and assessment for the city Bureau of Police.
Thank you. I believe we have Deputy Chief Sorensen here on behalf of the Police Department to give us some background on this piece of legislation.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you. Dr. Lagoon has provided psychological services for new hires, promotional evaluations, post conditional psychological evaluations, fitness for duty evaluations. And beginning of this year, he changed the name of his business, requiring him to, or us to reapply to use him for his professional psychological services. And he renamed the company Public Safety Assessments, put out new pricing guidance, submitted to W9, and we have used him. I know we have used him for many years in the past. Deputy Chief Moody spoke highly of him and his services and his availability. I know that he is available if we need to ask him any questions. I spoke to him really for the first time earlier this evening. And but I think you have all the documents before you for review. The fees, we did not think, they did go up a little bit with the new service, but I don't believe he's increased his prices for many, many years, and is pretty much available by phone consult for just to try and make a plan for either an individual having problems or scheduling. So really no issues there. But that's what I have based off any more questions, ma'am.
All right, I'll hold my questions to the end. I'll start with my colleagues. I will start with the end of the
Madam
dais
Chair,
if we were up to. Yes.
I wanted to, Dr. Laguna is on as well.
Okay, I didn't see him on, but Dr. Laguna, if you would like to speak and give us a little information. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I did beginning January 1st. I incorporated and changed to an LLC. The price increase really had nothing to do with that change in you know, from independent contractor to LLC. It was more a function of not having changed my pricing for the past 12, 13 years. And in the meantime, the pricing for testing and assessment, that is the scoring that I pay to the independent scoring companies and the test materials and so on, continued to rise each year. So essentially what I've done is I figured it out, and I increased my prices to reflect those changes in pricing. So in terms of personal profit, it's actually not very big. It's very small. But I felt that I had to do this in order to, you know, to stay in line with you know, the rises in pricing, essentially what I'm paying. As Deputy Chief Sorensen said, I've been providing services for Harrisburg City now for about 25 years, and that includes pre-employment testing for the police officers, fitness for duty evaluations, post-critical incident evaluations, and promotion evals, things like that. I also, with not only Harrisburg, but I provide services to a number of other departments, including Lancaster City, York City, and a number of others. And I always provide free consultations. So if a department is having any issues, anything that they have going on with officers or departmental wide, I'm always available, and I consult with them and help to you know, deal with any issues they might have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the questions up to my colleagues. I will start all the way down to the right if we were on the dais with Councilwoman Daniels.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Councilman Majors.
Yes, thank you. I think the one question I had regarding the pricing was answered, and I understand the need for the change. And I guess just for Deputy Chief, it seems this has been such a long existing contract. Do we look at this on an annual basis to potentially see about, you know, other services that may be provided in the area, or is this just such a specialty that I'm looking at his the webpage, and he seems to cover quite a bit of the police departments in our region, specifically in Dauphin County. So just was curious.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't give you the history. It's really my first year in the position, so I wasn't part of the discussions, and we did not look for other people to price. I know we've used Dr. Laguna for many years. Has provided great service for us, and really has never really raised his prices. So I mean, that was one of the considerations. I mean, it's something I guess we could look at, sir, if you'd like us to. But I mean, there's probably very few providers out there that we can just call, ask questions about how to formulate a plan to deal with a situation or an incident, and they don't charge you. No offense, Mr. Grover, but you know that usually it's by the hour, and a billable hour is a billable hour. And in this instance, it's a free consult, something you don't always get.
Right. And then I guess in terms of how the service is used for, I guess, pre-employment screening. So should a candidate go through and either receive a call, the consult, or an actual appointment with Dr. Laguna, and how was his recommendation then move forward through the process? So he recommends that this may not be a good candidate at the time.
Right.
What's the next step then? Do they continue through the process, or?
Yep, that's a great question, because right now we're in the middle of a hiring process. Tomorrow we begin 3 days of interviews with police candidates. Those selected to move on in the process will go through a physical test and also psychological examination, where Dr. Laguna will provide the Bureau and Human Resources with a report to show and he may be a lot better suited than I am, sir, to get into the specifics of it, but suitability to be a police officer with the city of Harrisburg, and some other tests they used. We used to determine if they're suitable to be a police officer. And Dr. Laguna, you can certainly step in if you see fit.
Yeah, one of the things, I wish that there were more people. One of the police psychology has come a long way in the last, many years. And what happened a number of years ago, probably 20 years ago, is the International Association of Chiefs of Police developed a psychological services division that has been for the last 20 years dedicated to promoting psychological health for police officers, research looking at better policing, better techniques, ways of coming up with psychological methods for screening police officers, and trying to come up with ways of essentially, picking the better candidates and recognizing potential problems in those candidates who have been shown to be not so good. One of the things we have a real scarcity of people in Pennsylvania in general. For example, I am the only certified by the American Psychological Association, NIACP. I'm the only certified police psychologist in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't say that to toot my own horn. I say that because to demonstrate that there just really are very few people that specialize in this field. If there are other people out there that could do the job cheaper, I understand the importance of budgets, but I would simply caution that people that do this kind of work have to have competency in this field, because there are many rules and regulations, and when you do hire a new candidate at the post-conditional offer phase, it's more than just my opinion about whether or not they are a suitable candidate. It really boils down to being able to use the most recent and valid and reliable tests and be able to interpret them accurately. And then also be familiar with all the laws, the case laws, Americans with Disabilities Act, and all of the statutes that play a big role in whether or not you can even whether or not you can even justifiably or legally disqualify them. So I know that was a roundabout answer, but I think the comment speaks to the importance of doing it right and knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the question wasn't necessarily towards the cost from my perspective. It was, again, a long-term existing contract. If there was other providers that we, explore, but understanding that, we have one in the state and you are located here, that provides me with a little bit more perspective on the situation. Yeah. So again, I guess just to put a pin on the question is, so at that phase, so, go through the physical evaluation, and then you have the psychological evaluation rather. I guess, HIPAA not getting anything personal, but how is that evaluation used in the determination process of a candidate?
Yeah, that's a really good.
If I may step in, just because it's a civil service question, actually, at the end of the day. So the doctor does it. He gives a recommendation to the police leadership. And then we've only had, I believe, in 7 years, one candidate who failed the psychological. And what happens if you fail the psychological, you don't move forward. You have the right to appeal that to the Civil Service Board and to the courts if you feel that that was improperly determined. But, that is, it is one of the requirements to get through the process of civil service and to the hiring process. So, and the test that Dr. Laguna initiates for our candidates is prescribed by, I believe it's the Police Chiefs Association through the consortium, if that's the right word for it, for the initial information. So that there's a uniform testing that's agreed upon in policing here in central Pennsylvania. But those are all part of the civil service rules about how we have to treat each officer, each candidate with the same set of criteria, and then give them due process rights if they don't make it through the process.
Okay, thank you. So a recommendation is made, and then got it. Okay, I'll defer now. No further question at this time. Thanks, Chair Green.
Thank you, Councilman Majors. President Williams, do you have any questions? You're muted right now, President Williams.
I'm sorry. No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice President Allett.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Madsen.
No questions for me. Thanks.
Councilwoman Bowers.
I don't have any questions. Dr. Laguna, thank you for being here. And I trust former Deputy Chief Moody's recommendation. I hope he is enjoying his retirement.
Thank you. I just have one or two questions.
Sure.
I don't see a length for the contract. I understand it's like an as-needed contract, but is there a length that it'll be reevaluated automatically? Or does this just go on until I guess we would find a reason to not continue?
This is a unique contract from our perspective. I don't believe the council has ever before seen a contract for the psychological testing of candidates. And I don't just mean this council. I don't think one has ever made it to city council in the past. Because there's a change in the law coming as well. And you may recall there were some reforms passed by the legislature last June that would create some additional psychological testing for officers along the way. This question is going to become an operational question for the police, which I think they still have to coordinate with MOPTEC, if I'm saying it correctly, on how that's going to be applied. And, we will be coordinating with Dr. Laguna because as we understand it, the same licensed professional cannot both assess and treat an officer. So as you noted, he's the only certified person we have, and yet the new law says we both have to assess and treat. And so that's still being operationally sorted out by the Police Bureau and the administration and HR on how to provide that now mandated service from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so it will be an issue as the year goes on, how to implement.
Okay. All right. So for right now, it's just as needed, with no specific length and contract, which might
Correct.
be a little later. Okay. And then the second question I have is, I guess for Deputy Chief Sorensen, about how many evaluations do you know that we have, like on an average year? Are you aware of about how many psychological evaluations are required for our officers?
Well, we send all the new hires that have passed the background investigation and then an interview process. I know tomorrow begins I think we're 14 people we're interviewing for patrol officer jobs for this week. So that'll be looking ahead for 2021. That will be it for the year, it looks like, potentially for right now. I don't have the number of evaluations. I do have the dollar figures of years from 2020 and 2019 that were spent, unless Dr. Laguna has the stats for evals. I don't have that in front of me, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I could certainly get it, but I don't have it right now.
Yes, if you could provide that information, that'd be very helpful. But Deputy Chief Sorensen, you said you do have the dollar figures. If you could provide those to us, that'd be awesome.
Yes, ma'am. In 2020, last year, it was $2,950. And in 2019, it was $6,925.
Okay. All right. Those are the only questions I have right now. Are there anyone else? Is there anyone else that would have any questions before we move this on? Hearing none, I would ask that we move this on to the next legislative session, and that I would ask that we get the information as soon as possible from Dr. Laguna if he's able to provide that to us. And that concludes my committee. I will pass it back over to President Williams. Thank you.
I just have one question. Who would I direct that to? Chief Sorensen or?
Dr. Luna, if you get the information to me, I can forward that over to Mr.
very good.
Petrosky and the City Council will get the information, sir.
Great, will do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. We now will move on to public comment. Mr. Petrosky, do we have any public comment at this time?
We have 3 participants at this time. If there's anybody that would like to provide public comment, now is your time to do so. Please raise your hand and I will unmute you. All right, you're unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, this is Jenny Jenkins Dallas.
Hello.
Can you hear me? This is Jenny Jenkins Dallas.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay, wonderful. So this is in regards to the amendment that was being proposed regarding the abatement program. And I just would like to ask that the council people stand up for the citizens of Harrisburg and do not take out any requirements to employ city residents. I think that is very tough for the city right now, or it has been for decades. There's no transit system, and the least, that can be provided is jobs. Matter of fact, it'd be a really good idea to maybe start up a listing of people, work with the unions for trainings and so forth. So I just don't think that it would be, I just don't think that that is something we want to start doing. We want to go the opposite way. And then lastly, I think Ms. Wanda made mention of it. And is there a possibility to go back over the last 5-10 years, whatever is feasible, to make sure that all those properties, those land, I forget what the terminology was, but that was added to those businesses or those private properties, make sure that the land is just reassessed and that the taxes are being paid on it. And that would be all. Thank you so much.
Ms. Williams, Ms. Dallas, please. I'd ask you to be respectful. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Petrosky. Mr. Petrosky?
Yes. Do we have any other public comment? Anybody else that's available that is on that is interested in speaking, please raise your hand at this time and I will unmute you. I believe that's all.
Okay. Okay, council members. Before we go tonight, I just want to mention about an event that's going to take place. Downtown Improvement District is having this event. It's the Ice Festival. It will begin March the 5th. It runs to March the 7th. On March 5th, which is a Friday, from 7 o'clock to 9 p.m. on City Island, they will have a drive-through using the same concept as they did with the Harrisburg Holiday Parade. You will have an opportunity to view 40 sculptures, 40 ice sculptures. On March 6th, which is Saturday, the ice sculptures will be placed all around the city so people can walk around and view them. They will be in the downtown area, the Midtown area, Shipoke, City Island, Italian Lake, Reservoir Park, and several other areas. Also, Saturday night, which is March 6th, there's an Eden Street event on 2nd Street, and that will start at 12 o'clock this afternoon to 7 o'clock p.m. And then wrap it up on Sunday. We will leave, Downtown Improvement District will leave the ice sculptures so that people can view them up until 7 o'clock p.m. Effective today, the St. Patrick's Day Parade has been canceled. And that's all the information I have on new business. Is there any other new business that or announcements that anyone would like to make?
President Williams?
Yes.
Just one quick announcement for me, just to remind everybody that tomorrow we will have our first hearing regarding the comprehensive plan. Details are on the city's website. Looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and questions around the comprehensive plan. I know it's been a long time waiting. I'm so excited to start these hearings and just looking forward to the conversation tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Is anyone else has new business? Like to mention any events that's going to happen in Harrisburg? Okay. If not, everyone have a good evening. Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.